Good evening, squad. It is time for 428 Shibuya Scramble. Last time we got all the bad endings. So now we're gonna do the true end. We're gonna hopefully have some time for the two other characters and some special episodes as well. Extra content things. Just getting it out of the way now, if you are not aware, the other emoticon is now live. It's a pair of scissors. I've been told it looks like a butterfly. I can see it. I'm good with it either way. I think it looks great. So now we have the two emoticons. Use them as you wish. I don't think there's any other housekeeping for tonight. No, nothing I can think of offhand. Alright, let's load up this game then. Kavina, hey, thank you for that cheer. Tonight on a very special episode of 428, we might actually finish with this game. And then Heather has to remember what other video games exist for later streams. This and more coming up next. Alright, so there's like some decision things we gotta do in order to review this true ending. It involves us going to the chime chart. Let's see, we need to be in Achi's path, option C at 1900 hours. That's selected, good. Kano's path, 1905, says it requires this one to be option A. That's taken care of. Good, good. Tatino, where are you? Ah, there he is. Orange timeline. Hey, Rock Pusher. I don't know if any of you saw the image I posted for going live on Twitter, but it's got Yellow Leader from Fire Emblem in it, hanging out upside down, as is his way. 1910. Need option B. Oh, I need to fix that well then. For those of you unaware, Fire Emblem Three Houses cover art got released. I don't want to pull this trigger if I don't have to. Okay, no, dialogue's probably not any different, but yeah, B. And Jack. Jack, alright Jack, here you are. 1920. Option C. Alright, cool. I guess I have to play out the rest of this. I had fun learning some Photoshop things today while I was supposed to be doing other work that now I'm a little bit behind on. But that's okay, because I figured out Photoshop. Well, some of it. I want to pull this trigger if I don't have to. Okay, well, let me skip. It's not that you don't want to pull that trigger, it's that you can't pull that trigger. Cannon took another step closer. You're still traumatized from that time you let your friend's wife die. What? How? How do you know about that? Oh, he was on the roof. Secretly there. Let's find out. Go ahead. Shoot me. You can't do it. You're afraid. Alright. The brain gears. Brain gears are so loud. Katoni's final moments flash through Tatano's mind. Like, this is not new information. I'd like to be able to skip it. Oh, haha. That's fun. Maybe Tadano needs a king because his brain gears are not well oiled. Maybe. I mean, there's plenty of reasons a cane can be used. Yeah, go ahead, kill me. What if I'm not that person, though? What if you're wrong? And you can't unkill me? I'm a Time Lord. No, wait. Tatano himself, not a Time Lord. Could make that same mistake again. His whole body felt like it might fall apart. And then he remembered Kano, when Kano said he could. He completely did miss at that point. Tatano had nearly forgotten, nearly abandoned his inward promise to be a detective worthy of that final salute Kano had given him, worthy of being written down in a thing called the Dick Dictum. Hey, Mamo. He brought his gun back up to bear. Don't be absurd, Cannon mocked. You can't shoot anyone. Actually, I can. The words creaked dryly from Tatano's throat. When there's something I'm supposed to protect, I can shoot. The memory of Kano weeping but taking aim had given him the resolve he needed to face down an opponent who ought to have terrified him. I learned that from someone who was terrible at his job. Cannon's eyes went cold. Immediately she lifted up her gun again. Once more their eyes locked, sparks of hostility crackling between them. Crackle, crackle. But almost immediately Tatano could sense the difference in skill. Yeah, this was not gonna go well. He couldn't win this. She would kill him, guaranteed. Tatano braced himself for death, never taking his eyes off Cannon's. Nothing else, he needed to buy time for Kano to get that password. But could he do that, given the opponent he faced? Yes, somehow he would do it. As a detective, as a man, even if he had to give his own life to succeed. Even if it couldn't come close to making up for the sins he had committed. And then Yellow Leader just like slips in from the top. Like, hey guys, hanging out? Alright. That should give us what we want. And back my... yeah, there we go. Alright, we've got all the choices. It says a new version of the epilogue should be accessible. We need to play through it. Watch the remainder after the game credits and the post-game scene. Right, doing this also gives us the bookmark we need for canon. Hey Drazoth! Hey Kikibi! Sorry, Kikabitzer. How you doing? Alright, we're just gonna skip as far ahead to this as it'll let me do. Hey Eric! Anyone else? That isn't canon! Alright, Maria came out here. Maria's voice exploded into the silence of the standoff. I doubt we're getting better testimony than that, Stanley said, his gun still at the ready. There's no talking your way out of things this time. The expression on Alfred's face didn't change. She stood still, a mannequin without a soul, as opposed to the mannequins with the souls. What did you do to Cannon? Maria demanded. I'll tell you what. Tildy House raided. Marching unsteadily toward the terrorist. Hey, Corey. Hey, Tildy House. Hey, Raiders. Corey was playing Dead Cells today? Or did she move to a different game? Can't keep track of all my friends' games. Dragon Quest! Right, Dragon Quest, the RPG of Dead Cells. No, that didn't work. Let's ignore that joke that Heather tried to make. Welcome, Raiders. It is Heather time. This is the Lunar Cafe. Thank you, Rock Pusher, for gifting that sub to Sarah. We are in the middle of 428 Shibuya Scramble. We're actually just about to do the true ending. So, all the exciting stuff is happening right now. Oh, yes, also the scissors emote's back. For those of you who missed that. I just got approved of today. Where were we? Right. Standoffs. Maria, stay back! Osawa exclaimed. She ignored him. Hey, don't get any closer, Tatano barked. He looked exhausted, on the verge of collapse. Answer me, Maria cried, still advancing. What happened to Cannon? But still, Alfred said nothing. Stanley, too, began edging toward her. It doesn't matter what you ask, he said. She won't tell you anything. Bit by bit, he inched closer. He was going to try to take her down. Let me turn your question around, Alfred said, abruptly. What do you think? Maria paused, confused. What do I think about what? What do you think happened to Cannon? The corners of her lips twisted up, shaping a mirthless smile. You killed her, didn't you? Maria's words came out as a whisper. What was that? Couldn't quite hear you. And then she screamed, You killed Cannon, didn't you? She was very angry when she screamed this one. Alfred snickered. She's provoking me, Maria thought, forcing herself to swallow her rage. She couldn't let herself get caught up in Alfred's game, or her anger would spill out of control. Why are you laughing? By force of will, Maria made her voice firm and steady. Because I'm guessing you weren't expecting me to show up here. Alfred raised an eyebrow ever so slightly. This thing here? It's a bomb, isn't it? Maria held out the necklace. What? Stanley furrowed his brow. Ah, of course. If we managed to catch you here, you'd still be able to destroy the lab. Still, the smile remained on Alfred's face. She seemed to enjoy watching the others figure out her intentions. But you can't trigger the bomb with me standing this close to you, can you? Maria locked eyes with Alfred. Unless you're prepared to sacrifice yourself? She stood, like an image of bravery, while on the inside, her apprehension threatened to tear her apart. She could feel her heart thudding so furiously that she thought it might explode. Cold sweat trickled down her spine. Given the amount of explosions are in this game, all things can explode. Only her rage at Cannon's murder kept her from backing down. Go ahead, blow yourself up if that's what you want, she said. But you'll die with nothing. Your death will mean nothing. But not mine. My death will avenge Cannon's. Silence fell outside the laboratory gates. Stanley and Tatano stood frozen, their guns still trained on Alfred. Both men were ready to pull the trigger at the slightest provocation. Just how long had they been there, staring one another down? The passage of time seemed to slow, seconds drawn into hours. Osawa swallowed audibly. Finally, Alfred tossed her gun onto the pavement and held up both hands in surrender. Stanley wasted no time, swinging forward to secure her. He gave her a thorough pat-down from behind. He removed a small device that looked like a detonator from one of her pockets. On your knees! Alfred did as she was told. Good. Now, hands behind your head. Try anything funny and I will shoot. G-Dwarf, hey, thank you for that resub. 16 months. How you doing? Without a word, Alfred placed her hands on the back of her head, fingers laced together. What are you playing at? Stanley growled disdainfully. Finally realized you can only push your luck so far? She responded with a faint snicker. It's not my policy to resist when things are hopeless. Her tone was detached, her intentions unreadable. Good. That'll make this easy. Stanley kept the barrel of his gun pointed at Alfred's head. This is for my brother. The words hung in his throat, unspoken. A surge of emotion coursed through him. Just a tiny bit more pressure from his index finger, and he could put a bullet right through Alfred's head. His long journey would finally reach its conclusion. But although he had wished for this moment more than anything, his finger did not move. If he pulled the trigger now, would that truly be the end? His mind reeled at the implications. Tatno watched Stanley closely, eventually letting out a tiny sigh of relief. They were in this together after all. Now they just needed to be careful to not let down their guard. He kept one eye on Alfred as he went to pick up the gun she'd discarded. But he was too late. The gun was gone. This is for Cannon. Maria had lunged forward, snatching up the gun. Maria, no! Saba cried. What are you thinking? She ignored her father, taking aim at Alfred's forehead. Cannon's dead, and you're gonna pay. The smoldering rage she'd fought to hold back blazed up with renewed fury. Maria, Stanley said calmly, put down the gun. He had nothing but words to stop her. There was no telling what Alfred might do if he took his gun off her. What will this accomplish, he asked, keeping his tone as level as possible. Maria's face remained awash with anger. Maria, her father pleaded, please don't do this. Tatno took a step forward. Go on, hand me the gun, he said. Stay back. Maria's arms trembled as she aimed the gun. Everyone stood frozen, not even daring to breathe. The slightest wrong move might bring disaster. The silence roared. I don't care, Alfred sneered. If you want to shoot, then shoot. You do want to revenge Cannon, don't you? Yes, I do. Maria tightened her grip on the gun. Memories of her friend drifted through her mind. To Maria, born into peace, meeting Cannon had been like touching a world beyond her own, a far more complicated world. Cannon had blood on her hands, from the time she was a little girl, a walking contradiction of cruelty and childishness. And yet, she had lived her life according to her own unshakable beliefs. Meeting her had made Maria think hard about her own identity. What did it mean to be Japanese? No, that wasn't the question. What did it mean to be Maria Osawa? That was the crux of it all. They had been able to find common ground despite differing ideals, because both possessed an unshakable sense of self. Maria made her decision. Maria's anger dissipated like smoke in a sudden wind. The tension seeped from her body, and she carefully lowered the gun. What's the matter? Alfred smirked. Why won't you shoot? Her eyes blazed with contempt for Maria's naivety. No. I'm not being naive, Maria told herself. Do unto others as they have done to you. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What does this recurring pattern of retribution really accomplish? It's just an endless cycle of hatred. That's why I'm not going to fight. Because I'm not like Cannon. Tears flooded from her eyes. I'm not like Cannon. But people who are different can still be friends. And I'm going to honor our friendship by not taking revenge. No matter what happens, I'm not going to hurt anyone, Maria said. Maybe that's not very realistic, but this is my fight, and I'll fight the way I choose. She wiped away her tears. For the first time, Maria felt that she understood Cannon. If she'd been able to see her just one more time, she would have to be able to speak her mind without fear. I could show Cannon the true me, and maybe then we would be friends for real. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. Maria handed the gun to Tatno, then looked up at the nighttime sky. the distance, she could faintly hear the sound of police sirens. Not one star could be seen in the sky over Shibuya. A black car, foreign make, arrived at the laboratory and pulled up to the curb. Stanley's superior, Gordon, emerged from the back. A few of his men followed and promptly placed Alfred in handcuffs. Well done, Gordon said. Stanley gave him a slight nod. I'll be taking Alfred back to headquarters. You can finish up here. Understood, sir. Gordon shoved Alfred into the back seat and slid in alongside her, and the car drove off. Who was that just now? Tatano asked Stanley. My boss. Sorry, but we'll be taking Alfred into custody. You will, huh? Tatano frowned, but decided not to press the point. They'd put a stop to Alfred's plan, and they had saved Maria's life. That was enough for him. Maybe he even began to atone for what he'd done to Hitomi. Kano, Suzune, Kotone, Tatano pictured all of their faces. Perhaps in the end he'd managed to become worthy of their respect. It's all over, Stanley spoke under his breath. His gaze locked onto the car taking Alfred away. The black cloud that hung over his heart had yet to lift, but he knew that today was the day he could finally put revenge aside. No longer would memories of his brother bring only sorrow. This'll do. Won't it, Frank? Abruptly, Maria's cell phone rang in Stanley's pocket. That's right. I meant to give this back to you. He handed the phone to Maria. I wonder who's calling. Maria picked up. She could hardly believe it when she heard the voice on the line. Brusque, girlish, with a daredevil ring. A voice that had been burned into her mind since the day she met its owner. No, it can't be. She'd been sure she'd never hear that voice again. Oh. In an instant, Maria's face was damp with tears of joy. Thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness. Cannon. Maria couldn't hold back her sobs. The tears kept coming and coming. She'd never wept with joy like this in her life. Yeah, because in the last one we saw, that was not a scene that happened. She got a phone call though, right? Like, we just didn't know? I can't remember now. 2 minutes? And she held his breath. Right. So, if you're not familiar, the bomb got stopped by using a dry ice machine. It was very weird. Thanks for that, Chukavina. Yeah, I'm glad she's okay. As she held his breath, he could no longer feel the seconds ticking by. The numbers on the display were changing more and more slowly, but still he watched in fear. It was impossible not to fixate on the countdown. Kano and Achi continued to stare at the timer. It had stopped. The timer had actually stopped. We did it! Achi dropped to his knees with a cry of triumph. The rest of the Shibuya Scramble burst into cheers. You're one reckless guy, you know that? Kano held his hand out. Achi grinned up at him. That makes 2 of us. The 2 clasped hands firmly, their handshake conveying more than any words could have. Achi! Susumu came rushing over. You did it, man! I knew you could do it. The 2 bumped fists. Aw, it weren't just me, Achi said. Could never have done it without you guys' help. Susumu smiled bashfully. Hey, Susumu, take care of SOS for me. You got it. Susumu looked squarely in the eye. Achi gave a little nod, and the 2 solemnly bumped fists again. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash, and she spun around to see Chiaki standing there, beaming happily, her digital camera ready for another shot. Everyone gather up, Norikawa called, out to Achi and his pals. You guys are the heroes of Shibuya. Photo time, everyone, Chiaki said. Get ready. The young men struck a pose together. Wait, her too. Minorikawa ushered Hitomi over to stand with Achi. Hitomi? Achi flashed her a sheepish grin. It was all thanks to Hitomi that he'd been able to do what he had done. keeping Shibuya safe, keeping his promise to Suzune. Hitomi had been his inspiration for it all. There were so many things he wanted to say, but he couldn't get the right words out. Achi, I... Hitomi's cheeks were damp with tears. Hey now, young lady, Minorikawa called. No crying now. Come on, show us a smile. He struck a goofy pose beside Chiaki. At last, the smile returned to Hitomi's face. It really is the best. Hitomi looked up at Achi in confusion. Your smile, he said. It's the best. I don't care what anyone else says. He spoke so earnestly that Hitomi couldn't help but smile even more. Okay, here we go, people. Get your best faces on. At Minorikawa's signal, everyone let out a joyous victory cry. Yeah! Still really like the dude in the back. Come on, guys, Susumu shouted. Let's lift Ashi up where everyone can see him. Maybe he's related to Yellow Leader. The members of SOS let out another roar. Huh? No, you don't gotta do that, guys. Hey, cut it out. But Ashi had already been swallowed by the enthusiastic throng. Right, I remember this happening. His leg is gonna be so badly injured for a long time with stuff like this. Yeah! There in the middle of the scramble, Achi was being hailed as a hero. Kano looked on with a satisfied smile. What they had achieved together was nothing less than a miracle. It had taken a lot of luck, and more than a few coincidences for them to stop the bomb. Coincidences, Kano muttered to himself. No, that wasn't right. This was something different altogether. Fate, that's what it was. And not just one person's fate. The destinies of several people had collided, gathering momentum until coincidence became inevitability, and Shibuya was saved. The raucous crowd tossed Achi high into the air again and again. As a plainclothes detective, Kano would probably never be showered with adulation quite like that. Well, that was alright. A detective's duty was to ensure the safety of the people. He didn't put his life on the lines so that he could be a hero. Just seeing all those smiles, that was good enough for him. Kano only needed the approval of one person, and that was Rumi. I hope she managed to get out of Shibuya okay. Suddenly worried, Kano pulled out his cell phone. There was a whole bunch of things he wanted to tell her. He couldn't share the whole story, police rules wouldn't allow it, but he wanted to let her know as much as he could. That the kidnapping case had been resolved safely, for instance. That he'd learned about the tortured past of the detective he so admired. That his partner was going to pull through. That he'd managed to finally talk to her father. That he'd put his life on the line to save Shibuya from danger, which technically was still in danger until that bomb was really resolved with. Little details. Ruby would listen quietly to the very end, and then, Kano thought, he knew just what she'd say. Short and sweet. In that gentle voice of hers. Good job. Rumi, hello? There was no response. Do they have a bad connection? Hello? Rumi, are you there? Can you hear me? Look, the case is closed now. If you're still somewhere close to Shibuya, I'd love to see you if I can. You want to see me, huh? Don't you have a mountain of paperwork you should be doing first? Oh, comedy. The gruff voice was Shizuo's. Oh, well, you see, Father, I told you not to call me that. Shizuo barked so loudly over the phone that Kano's ear rang. Right, no, of course. And, yes, I'll do my job. Just wanted to check and make sure that Rumi was alright. Looks like I misjudged you. Maybe you are the kind of guy who'll blow off work to meet with a girl. Dad, hey! Kano heard Rumi's voice cry out with exasperation. Come on, let me have my phone. I know that work is important, sir, Kano said hurriedly, but Rumi is even more important to me. He felt his panic rising. After all that had happened, he didn't want Shizuo to end up with a bad impression. Oh, be quiet. If you want to see Rumi, you can do it once you've finished your work. Well, but I'm not sure when that's going to be. I waited on you today a lot longer than I wanted, so at this point, I don't care how long it takes you. We can wait all night if we have to. Shizuo let out a peculiar sigh. And then, you and I can talk again about you marrying my daughter. Huh? Before Kano could make sure he'd heard that right, Shizuo hung up. Huh? What? He stared at the phone, his mind reeling, and then he was hit with a veritable explosion of joy. Hey, there we go! E-Block, you wanted that explosion? The word explosion showed up. That's something. Yes! Kano leapt into the air and shouted with delight, his voice echoing through Shibuya streets. I'll take it. Once the crowd had put Achi back down on his feet, he rushed over to Hitomi. His leg mysteriously healed. So, Hitomi, yes? Hitomi, there's so much stuff I want to talk to you about. So many things I want to tell you. He gazed into her face. But Suzune, he didn't know how to continue. Hitomi smiled warmly. She understood. Go on, Achi. Go see your sister. There's nobody here in trouble that you need to rescue now. Thank you. I better get going then. To see Suzune. Achi broke away from his circle of friends and headed out of Shibuya Scramble. Strangely enough, his leg didn't hurt too much now. Glad you realized that too, Game. Despite all that had happened, he felt invigorated, as if he was just waking to a brand new day. Achi, Hitomi called out after him. I'll see you again, won't I? Achi nodded vigorously. Of course. Just come to Shibuya. You'll find me. Guys could trade phone numbers. He'd been born and raised in Shibuya, but after today, he loved the place more than ever. Alright. We gotta let the credits roll. Endorphins? Really? Alright. There should be a post-credit scene still. But that's most of it. We're going to a hospital where he can still get his leg checked. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. He'll get there, those endorphins will wear off, and he'll fall over, and they'll be like, Sir. We're glad you showed up. I think the bit with Alfred came after the credits last time. As well, there's like a short thing. Pretty sure. Okay, give Vitzer, thank you for that resub 17 months. We win. We do. And there's more we're gonna do after we do this. We got 2 character scenarios we should be able to do, and we still have like something like 11 special episode things to go through. Which I think I might try to do the character stuff first, just because I assume those are going to be longer. And the dungeon, don't forget about the dungeon. I looked up some stuff about that dungeon. It looks... from what it sounds like, it seems like there's nothing really that goes on. You fail or you don't. Noisy croak. Alright. Ah, here we go. Gordon and Alfred sat in the back seat as the car sped along the hallway. Here. Gordon tossed the handcuff key onto the seat beside him. What happened down at the scramble? Alfred asked, picking up the key and unlocking her cuffs. Leyland Palmer was arrested by the Japanese police, and the bomb in the attaché case was defused, apparently. Well, frozen. Still, Palmer shouldn't pose a problem once we get him into CIA custody. I see. Much obliged. You really got yourself back to a corner, though, didn't you? Gordon said. Yeah. I was only able to accomplish half of what I intended. Half? Alfred produced a vial from her pocket. It was filled with red liquid. Is that Hitomi's blood? Gordon asked. Indeed. I managed to acquire the antiviral. But when? Gordon peered at her in bewilderment. When I blew up the minivan, in the dim light of the vehicle, Alfred's eyes shone darkly, like those of a wounded animal. Extracting the blood from Hitomi while she was unconscious had been a simple matter. Saving the girl's life had been more than just a means of ensuring her trust. Alfred had been looking for the right moment to carry out the extraction. Total secrecy was essential. If it became public knowledge that the drug existed and that some of it had been stolen, the value of the virus would plummet. Our primary objective here was to destroy that research facility. Still, getting our hands on the antiviral is better than nothing. Well then, as always, Alfred. Draza, thank you for gifting that sub to Ash Mantle? Yeah, I believe that's right. To Ash Mantle. Hey, this is new. Everybody's in an airport, walking along, talking on their cell phones. Looking at the floor. Is this where an explosion happens? This is kind of the thing I guess all the time now. I didn't even know we could have this much video all at once. Ooh. She's behind you. What? Game. Oh, we got the bookmark. All those tight cuts with the spinning and the like What? And the anime? What?
パスコードが変えられている。
解放戦線を裏切ったのか。
目的となる貨物車両を3両。警報は解除したんじゃないのか。
定か、そちらの進行は。
潜入経路に問題はない。みんな黙らせていいんだよ。
彼女の専門は暗号を破る。
それ以外に理由はない。
待て。
渋谷の文字はお前とは相性が悪いみたいだ。
Oh my goodness. Well, true ending worth. This game's like live action, not just live action. Wait. Is this just the...
お前はまだ復讐を考えているな。
Yeah,
パ
this
ス
is
コード
just
が
what we
変えられ
saw.
ている。
解放戦線を裏切ったのか。
目的となる貨物車両を3両。警報は解除したんじゃないの。
Alright.
そちらの進行は。
潜入経路に問題はない。みんな黙らせていいんだよ。
彼女の専門は暗号を破る。
それ以外に理由はない。
待て。
渋谷の文字はお前とは相性が悪いみたいだ。
Neat. So what's this then? Oh, we've seen this. Never mind. Okay. Goodness. This scenario by Type Moon got a sequel as an anime television series titled Canon, which aired in Japan from July to September 2009. Per Wikipedia. What? Weird. Type Moon, huh? I mean, I guess that makes sense. Alright, yeah, I'm supposed to go to... Load game. Manic Pixie Dream Lurker, thank you for that. Cheer. Now for the true end. Alright, push this button. Okay, we're coming back to this anime thing. I feel like I don't want to do that first. Hey, Suzune. It was almost 1 o'clock. Takuya Kazama watched the orderly collect his meal tray, waiting for the door to fully close behind him before slipping out of bed. He dragged the folding chair closer to the window and sat down. Then he meticulously scanned the entire length of the vast central courtyard outside. From up here on the second floor, he had a great view of the whole open space. The hospital building was shaped like a boxy U, enclosing a promenade that wove its way between the trees, where pajama-clad patients and visitors from their families were enjoying the first day of sunshine to come along in a while. Not yet. She still isn't here. I seem to be doing okay today. If she does show up in the courtyard, I'll sneak out for a walk myself. And then I'll make sure I go and talk to her. Hey, what's your name? No, I can't just come up and ask her like that. Maybe I should tell her my name first? I'm Takia. Who are you? Or is it silly to tell her what my name is when she hasn't even asked? So what's wrong with you? No, she's been here for at least as long as I have. Whatever it is can't be anything small. So yeah, no way I can open with that. That comes later. Much later. Nice weather we're having. Now, what am I, 90 years old? I need to say something hip. You come out here all the time, huh? Oh, that's terrible. Might as well say I've been watching you. She'll think I'm a stalker. In the midst of his internal debate, Takio opened to cast his gaze back out into the courtyard, and there she was, standing right under his window. She wore a white cardigan over her pajamas, standing with her head tilted back and her eyes closed, basking in the light of the sun. The angle finally gave him a good look at her face. The wind caught her evenly cropped bangs, blowing them back to expose the delicate curve of her forehead. She looked deeply happy as she stood breathing, a gentle smile across her face. Heartbeat of spring. It's a really nice image. Takio felt as though she were smiling at him, and it brought a tightness to his chest. He'd always thought that it would make him impossibly happy were that angelic smile ever turned his way. So why did it hurt so much instead? He saw her open her eyes back up, and he hurriedly backed away from the window. She saw me, or did she? No, there's no way she could see in here with that glare. But what does it even matter? I was going to talk to her anyway, right? So go on, get out there. Fighting his nerves, Takio moved back to the windowsill. She was gone, like a ghost. Where had she disappeared to? Takio scrambled out of his room and rushed to the elevator. You'll be alright. My muscles aren't too stiff. Today's a good day. Takio? Takio, where are you going? He recognized the voice of a familiar nurse calling out from behind him, but he ignored her and jammed his thumb on the close button. Once he was down on the first floor, he made his way to the courtyard exit, slipped on some sandals, and headed outside. He pretended to be out for a walk as he wandered in search of the girl, but went the length of the courtyard and back to the spot under his window without finding her. That's odd. Usually she stays out here a lot longer. You look a little pale. Are you alright? Asked a voice. Huh? He turned and saw the girl sitting on a nearby bench. Takio took half a step back in surprise. Somehow he'd missed her in the shadow of the trees. I'm sorry, she said. Did I startle you? No, not really. You look like you're in pain. Should I go get a doctor? She was right. He wasn't used to so much walking. I'll be alright. I just need to rest for a bit, he said, relieved he'd managed to answer. Lately his words hadn't been coming out all that well. The girl stood up and reached a hand out to him, but Takio couldn't bring himself to take it. Instead, he simply sat down on the bench. Not too close to her, but not too far away either. You want to get that just right distance. Enough room for third person. His heart had suddenly begun pounding, but he couldn't tell if it was because of his exhaustion or because he was so close to her. So, you're the boy from the room up there, right? She pointed to his window on the second floor, and Takio had to stifle a gasp. A little earlier we made eye contact, didn't we? Did we? Takio mumbled, averting his gaze. I was just spacing out. I didn't notice. I've seen you up there from time to time. You look lonely. Are you not able to leave your room much? She didn't notice that I'm always looking at her. Good. Yeah, I get tired real easy. I see. I'm not able to get much exercise myself, but they told me that when I'm feeling well enough for it, I should get up and walk around a bit so my leg muscles don't get weak. You have a problem with your legs? No, with my heart. They say the legs are like a second heart. They play an important part in blood circulation. So if my leg muscles get too weak, it's bad for my health. You know how when a racehorse breaks a leg, it winds up dying? I guess it's sort of like that. Her tone was cheerful enough, as if she talked about this all the time, but the thought filled Takio with sadness. So, yes? Do you mind if I ask your name? As he fumbled the words out, the girl broke into a beaming smile. That wonderful smile, the one that until now he had only seen from afar so many, many times. Suzune, Endo. The Suzune is written with the characters for bell and sound. So like, the chiming of bells. Suzune, the chiming of bells. It was a name that suited her soothing voice perfectly. Suzune Endo. Suzune Endo. Takio repeated the name to himself over and over. What's your name? Takia. Takio Kazama. That's a pretty cool name. I guess it means tough guy or something? Not that I live up to that. The truth was that Takio was always embarrassed to tell strangers his name. I don't know about that. You seem pretty cool to me, Takia. So how old are you? Takio's heart sank. Only kids had to be told they were cool. I'm 14. What about you, Suzune? From afar, he hadn't realized how tall she was. Taller than him. Probably older. 17. He thought the difference would be less. 3 whole years apart? Takio's heart sank further. Now she seemed even more unattainable. As he tried to think of a way to nonchalantly ask Suzune where her room was, he heard the slap-slap of sandals approaching. Suzune! A boy came running up. He was young, maybe in first grade or so. Hi, Ken. Long time no see. Is your brother? Takio asked. No, he's in the room next to mine. Who's this? The boy clung possessively to Suzune's knee as he peered at Takia. This is Takia, Kazuma. He's a patient like us. Huh. Hey, I got some candy. Want to eat it? The boy tugged on Suzune's hand. Oh yeah? Alright then. Takia, I'll see you later. Yeah. Later. Later? Later when? Am I actually going to get to see her again? As Takia watched the young boy drag Suzune back inside, he felt a bitter surge of resentment. He thought that finally getting the chance to talk to her would make him feel a lot better, but instead he felt worse than he had back when all he could do was stare at her through the window. The sunlit garden suddenly struck him as cold and desolate, so he trudged back inside, his muscles faintly shuddering with each step. He made his way back toward the elevator to find the head nurse waiting in the corridor, glaring at him. He kept his head down and tried to slip on past her, but she snapped at him as he drew near. What were you talking about with Miss Endo? Huh? Takia blushed at the idea that she'd been watching them, but he soon realized she was being serious. You shouldn't get too close to that girl. Why not? He asked. She may not look it, but she's seriously ill. Neither of you has the ability to fend off a major infection, and we certainly don't want you to go catching anything. The nurse looked away as she spoke, rattling off the words. But they let her go outside like that, right? Yes, that's true. But Takia, why in the world did you go out? Did the doctor tell you to go for a walk? No. But I thought that, since I was feeling pretty well and all, you expect me to believe that? You're shaking. Come on, let's get back to bed. The nurse ushered Takia into the elevator and escorted him back to his room. He was actually quite exhausted, and so he quietly got back into bed. Nurse? Takia called out to her as she was leaving. Yes? Suzune, Miss Endo, I mean. She's got a bad heart, doesn't she? Did she tell you that? For whatever reason, the head nurse seemed quite shocked that Suzune had shared this information. Yeah, what is she sick with? It's something very serious. That's why you ought to leave her alone. But she's going to get better, right? Takia regretted the question the instant he asked it. The nurse's grim expression was answer enough. A sweet and cheerful girl like that had an incurable illness. For a while, Takia couldn't even believe it. After the nurse had left, he stared at the closed door in a daze. The calendar's on the wall. From that day on, Takio kept up his vigilant watch on the courtyard, sneaking out of his room whenever he caught sight of Suzune. Bit by bit, the two of them began talking more. Sometimes she'd come out 2 days in a row, and sometimes he wouldn't see her for nearly a week at a time. Other times he would wander the hospital corridors in search of her room, only to be intercepted and sent back to his own room by the head nurse. Suzune was quite popular, most especially the old men, old women, and young children at the hospital seemed devoted to her. Kinda wish you hadn't started with the old men in this sentence. I didn't know where we were going, and it was vaguely uncomfortable. Their faces lighting up whenever she was around. She was kind enough to listen to all their grumbling or trifling conversations. Takio was equal parts impressed and baffled by her ability to relate to them. I could never put up with that sort of thing. More than anything, though, her popularity was frustrating. He would have had much more time alone with her if all these people weren't always around. Nah. He felt like he was the last in a long line of supplicants waiting for her to grace him with a few moments of her time. But after she learned about Takio's condition, perhaps out of some strange form of camaraderie, Suzune seemed to develop more of an interest in him. Wilson's disease, also known as hepatolenticular degeneration, a congenital abnormality of the liver cells in which the cell's ability to eliminate excess copper from the body is impaired, leading to copper accumulation in the liver, basal ganglia, corneas, and kidneys. The disease can cause difficulties with movement and neurological problems and often leads to further complications such as acute hepatitis and cirrhosis of liver. Whoa, that sounds nasty. I've never heard of it. Is it serious? Suzune's concern seemed entirely genuine. For a brief moment, Takio was almost happy about his rare and grave condition. But he couldn't say that, of course, and so he just nodded. Yeah, if you look, you can see that my eyes have turned kind of brown. Takio pointed at one of his eyes to indicate the pale brown ring in his cornea. Abnormal buildup of copper can cause brownish rings to appear along the edge of the cornea. These are known as Kaiser-Fleischer rings. Sure. It's something you're born with, where copper builds up inside your body. Hey, Dracus. I'd get really tired super easily, and the doctors checked me out. It turned out I had hepatitis caused by Wilson's disease. My liver was already seriously damaged, and the only thing that'll fix it is a transplant. That's why I'm in here. But finding a compatible donor has been hard. I guess we're in the same boat. You need a transplant too, Suzune? Yeah, I'm still waiting. I have what's called dilated cardiomyopathy. It's a condition where a structural change in heart muscle cells causes the ventricle walls to become thin and distended. This decreases heart function, and as the condition progresses, it can lead to heart failure, arrhythmia, and other issues. Victims of the disease have a high probability of sudden death at a young age. At present, a heart transplant is the only cure for the disease. They've tried other forms of treatment, like limiting food and water intake for long periods, putting an implanted defibrillator, and other things. A device implanted within the body that delivers an electric shock to a heart has gone into cardiac arrest due to arrhythmia caused by ventricular fibrillation, or ventricular tachycardia? Not sure. These implants are an effective defense against cardiac arrest, but when triggered they can also cause intense pain in some patients due to the electrical energy involved. But it looks like a transplant's the only real solution. Dilated cardiomyopathy? Defibrillator? What are those? Taki didn't understand all the vocabulary, but it sounded like her condition was even worse than his own. I mean, you would if you had all the footnotes. But the biggest problem, Suzune continued, is that there just aren't a lot of heart donors in Japan. And moreover... Abruptly she fell silent. A look of loneliness crossed her face, and she turned back to Takia with a reassuring smile. You'll find a match soon, Takia. Everything will be fine. And you'll find one too, Suzune. Isn't that right? Takia felt like something was caught in his throat. It was hard to get the words out. Yeah, if I'm really lucky. Suzune hesitated before continuing. But even then, I doubt I'll be able to get the surgery. Her tone was so matter-of-fact. Why not? Takio asked. My family doesn't have much money, so we can't afford to get surgery overseas. But it's alright. I don't really like the idea of being saved by someone poor brain-dead person's heart. I mean, that's what it comes down to, you know. Unless someone else dies, I can't be saved. If I had to think of some family out there grieving over their loss, I wouldn't be able to be happy, even if it did mean I got better. Takio had never thought about that. Just imagining part of some stranger's body getting put inside his own was more than scary enough. Still, if he had to choose between that and death, well, it wasn't even a contest. But if you don't get a transplant, then everybody dies. That's just how it is. For some of us, it just happens earlier than for others. You can't just give up like that, Takia cried. I won't survive unless I get someone's liver. But if I'm lucky enough to actually get one, I'll be happy about it. The doctor told me that people only give their organs on death because they want to. They want to save lives. Suzune appeared flustered. I'm sorry. I know that's the way I should be thinking about it. I'm sure that things will go well for you, Takia, and that you'll find a donor for you. And you shouldn't hesitate to get that surgery. By getting better, you'll be honoring the dead in a way. But she let out a sigh. That's not going to happen for me. Why not? My blood type is really unique. I don't think a compatible donor is ever going to turn up. A unique blood type, Takio stammered as little as he asked. You mean, like, Rh negative? Suzune shook her head. You've probably never heard of it. It's called Bombay. They say only a few dozen people have it in all of Japan. One of that handful of people would have to happen to go brain dead. Then they'd need to get that person here before their heart stopped. And then the surgery itself would need to go well enough. That's too many coincidences to hope for, don't you think? You know? Takio was too surprised to say anything at all. I'm not about to live what's left of my life expecting that I'll win the lottery like that, Suzune said. It's better to focus as best as I can on what I can do. On what you can do? What do you mean? There are a lot of patients here like you and me who have been here for a very long time. Most of them are senior citizens whose families rarely, if ever, come to see them. And I kind of enjoy listening to older people talk. They've all got plenty of interesting stories to tell. But more importantly, it brings smiles to their faces having someone who's willing to listen to them. They tell me that, for a little while, it's like they're young again, like their pain has gone away. And seeing them smile, it makes me happy too. I want to make friends with as many people as possible, to learn about as many people as I can. I don't have time to wallow in my own misfortune. Takio had assumed that, unlike himself, Suzune was as cheerful as she seemed to be, because she had hoped that she'd get better. He'd been suffering through his own illness, and had thought day in and day out about how unlucky he was to have been born with it. Though he hated to admit it, he had long since discarded any hope that they'd find a donor and give him a successful transplant. Until he met Suzune, he'd lived every day cursing his fate. Their circumstances were so similar, so why were they so different? Suzune was like an angel. Takio felt like a miserable excuse for a human being. I have to spend a lot of time resting in bed, Suzune said, so I read a lot. novels, essays. Sometimes I try reading more difficult books on philosophy. I don't always understand a lot of it, but sometimes it just clicks, you know? And I read high school textbooks sometimes too. Well, except for math. I've given up on that. Techie didn't like reading. When he was in his room, he just watched TV. A lot of the time, the only shows that were on were garbage, and he knew they were garbage while he was watching them. But there wasn't really anything else that caught his interest. His motivation to study was non-existent, and he certainly didn't have any textbooks in his room. It wasn't like he was going to go on and live a full life, get a normal job, have a normal family. So what was the point there in studying? That's what he had always thought, at least. Am I just wrong? Halfway through her dinner, Susune found that she'd lost her appetite. Her mood was bleak. Why'd I get so high and mighty with Taki like that? All I ever do is pretend to be the person I wish I was. In reality, all I do is worry about just when this heart of mine is going to stop. I know it's normal to be afraid of dying. I practice smiling for my father and my brother. I don't want them to see my fear. I was happy and a little bit shocked when I realized that my fake smiles actually worked. My smiles might have been forced, but the ones I got from those old men and old women and all the little kids, those were real. Oh, hey, Susune. Hello, young lady. Everyone's always so happy to see me. At some point, Susune had realized that she was no longer able to tell if her own smile was fake or not. She wasn't lying when she said that smiles on other people's faces brought her joy. But every now and then, the loneliness returned. She wished she could tell someone how scared she was, finally let herself shed the tears she'd held in for so long. But she'd never be able to do that to either her father or her brother. She didn't want them worrying about her any more than they already did. Her pulse grew erratic. Her intense heartbeat hammered like the hoofbeats of a horse at full gallop. Intense heartbeat, a type of abnormal heartbeat known as a gallop rhythm. Instead of the normal 2-beat lub-dub rhythm of a healthy heart, it consists of 3 beats, resembling the sound of galloping horse, an indication of potential heart failure. A sensation she'd known since childhood. Then she felt an intensely painful electrical shock course through her. Her implanted defibrillator had activated. After suffering through the pain for about 10 seconds, she felt her heartbeat stabilize. I'm alright. My heart is still pumping. But despite her relief, it was impossible not to think about how her time was drawing ever closer. If you're in pain, just say so. It's okay to admit it. With a start, Susune looked up and saw a nurse in her doorway. She hadn't even noticed the door opening. Was it time to have her temperature taken again? She hurriedly put on the mask of a smile. Oh no, I'm okay. It's all calmed down now. Your illness isn't the problem. Hiding it is. If you need a little comfort, just ask. Susune was at a loss for words. It was dark outside, and with the lights in her room turned off, she couldn't get a good look at the nurse's face. The woman was tall and slender and had a rather nice build. Was there a nurse like this on staff in this ward? She couldn't remember. What are you talking about? Susune felt her smile warp as she struggled to conceal a sudden upwelling of sorrow. You're facing your condition like an adult, but from your father's perspective, you're still his little girl. It's completely natural for your family to worry about you. This person knows who I am. I'm not sure how, but she knows everything. Susune let her mask fall. She looked down at her hands balled tightly into fists, and she let the tears come. I want to be a strong person, but I can't do it. Everyone tells me what a strong and cheerful girl I am. But it's all a lie. The words spilled out of as her emotions came rushing to the surface. I'm afraid of dying. I'm afraid of getting surgery. I'm even afraid to go on living. What scares me more than anything is when night comes. I'm afraid every time I go to sleep that I might not wake up again. I thought that if I kept pretending I wasn't scared, that eventually I'd be able to fool myself. But that didn't happen. I'm the only one I can't fool. I think you're plenty strong. Huh? Everyone's afraid of death. That's why they try their hardest to look away from it. Why they try to forget during the day-to-day that it's coming. But you face it every day. Face it head on. You're a stronger girl than you think. Everyone else probably underestimates your strength. The nurse's voice was smooth and soft. Her words flowed over Suzune, washing away her darker emotions. That's why you shouldn't push yourself so hard. If you keep trying to face all your fears by yourself, then one day you might break. It's okay to let it out every now and then. Vent your frustrations. You're fighting so hard every day, there's nothing wrong with asking for a little help. The nurse sat down on the bed and began to gently stroke Suzune's hair. If you're ever afraid to go to sleep, call for me anytime. I'm always here for you. I'll watch until you wake up in the morning. That should help, yes? I couldn't ask you that. Is that what Suzune had meant to say? With the comforting warmth that enveloped her stopped the words, carrying her gently towards sleep. It was a feeling she'd nearly forgotten. Like something from very long ago. But from when exactly? When Suzune awoke the next morning, the nurse was gone, but she did not despair. If she ever needed her, the nurse would be there for her again. Of that she was sure. Good morning, Miss Endo. Yeah, nurse is probably a ghost. The nurse who came to take her temperature was the usual one, not the one who'd been there in the night. Good morning. A natural smile came to Suzune's face. She felt deeply grateful that she'd gotten to live to see another day. More cheerful music. The weather was nice, so after lunch, Suzune headed out into the courtyard. More than anyone else, she hoped to run into Takia. She'd understood his outlook on the world the moment she learned of his condition. Plus, it was kind of cute seeing how hard he tried to hide the way he felt. The fondness she felt for him was like that for a younger brother. At some point, she'd realized that they had a special bond. There was a sense of solidarity, knowing that they were both waiting on a transplant for an otherwise incurable disease. She wanted to say that the things she'd told him the day before, that she was just searching for an ideal, something to live up to. She wasn't philosophical. She wasn't enlightened. She just wanted to be honest about how hard it was every day. Surely he would understand. Oh goodness, he's not going to be dead, is he? But Suzune didn't see Taki in the courtyard that afternoon. She made small talk with several other patients like she usually did, then headed back to her room. Taki didn't turn up the next day either, nor the day after that. Oh no. She would look up at his window from the courtyard, but she never saw him. Where was he? Had his condition taken a turn for the worse? Was he no longer well enough to go outside? Suzune had never been to the second floor where his room was, but she knew the first floor well enough that she could guess the layout well enough to avoid getting lost. With that in mind, she decided to pay Takia a visit. She went to the second floor, walking slowly as she eyed the nameplates for the rooms along the courtyard side. There, right about where she expected it to be, she found it, Takia Kazama. She'd been afraid that his nameplate had been removed. If it hadn't been there, that would have meant he'd been discharged, that his room had been swapped for some reason. Or else. As Suzune was about to knock, a voice called out from behind her. Miss Endo? She turned around to see an unfamiliar nurse standing there. Perhaps she was in charge of the ward, or had seen Suzune walking around before, and that was how she knew her name. Yes, Suzune asked. Are you looking for Takia? Yeah. I hadn't seen him in a while. I was wondering... I'm sorry. Takia wants to get out more than he does, but honestly, he's not in any shape to be moving around much. We're worried about infection as well, so we've limited his visitors. You probably shouldn't be wandering this far yourself. The nurse pointedly pulled the sliding door to Takia's room closed. If I could just see him real quick... No, the nurse snapped, then hurriedly cleared her throat and spoke more softly. You wouldn't want his condition to get worse, would you? Suzune saw that she'd have to back down. She returned obediently to her own ward. No. Mean. But she had a hard time accepting the fact that she couldn't visit Takia. Does that nurse have some kind of grudge against me? Not only does she know my name and know about my condition, she must also know that I've been talking with Takia in the courtyard. Does she think I'm the reason his condition has gotten worse? Suzune knew that his health wasn't as good as he might have claimed, and she felt a little guilty that she hadn't been as considerate as she perhaps should have. After that, whenever Suzune went out for a walk, she made a point of swinging by Takia's room, asking several nurses and doctors about his condition. They would always say he was doing fine, but staunchly refused to let her see him. Is he maybe already... Suzune couldn't help but imagine the worst. Is everyone just working together to keep me in the dark? But why would they do that? Do they think I'm his girlfriend and they're trying to keep me from the shock of finding out or something? No, that was ridiculous. Besides, this was a hospital. Suzune knew full well that they didn't have the time to put on some weird piece of theater after a patient had passed away. There must be some other reason. Some reason they don't want us to see each other. Willing to do whatever she could to discover that reason, Suzune tried changing the time of day that she stopped by Takia's room. Maybe if nobody was watching, she'd be able to sneak a peek inside. If someone happened to be coming or going, she might even be able to get a look at his face. But Suzune never imagined the way she'd finally wind up seeing him again. On that day, she'd been hiding behind one of the heated meal carts used for delivering dinner to the patients. She followed the orderlies as they brought the cart toward Takia's room. They'd have to open his door in order to bring his tray inside. But before she reached his room, the door swung forcefully open, and a bed was swiftly pushed from inside. Doctors and nurses, their faces pale, ushered it along, pushing the meal cart out of the way as they raced down the corridor. Taki lay on the bed, his eyes closed, his face severely jaundiced. He didn't appear to be conscious. Takia, Suzune cried out without thinking. One of the nurses glanced back at her briefly before disappearing from sight with the others as they brought the bed into the elevator. Takia, as Suzune stood there dumbstruck, her eyes strayed to the open door to his room. With shaky footsteps, she went inside. Taki's room was largely the same as her own. There was a locker by the entrance along with a small refrigerator. Over by the window was a TV stand. Next to that was a bookshelf packed with books. She picked up one of the books atop the bedside table. It was a beginner's primer on topics such as organ transplantation and brain death. On the bookshelf were other more difficult-looking medical volumes, intended for experts. Taki has been studying up on diseases. I wonder if he's been holed up in here reading these the whole time. Maybe he'd overdone it studying. That would be a cruel irony. Suzune prayed to a god she had never before believed in. Please, save him. I mean, I guess at least he wasn't using Google. Takia blearily opened his eyes. This wasn't his room. An artificial respirator was fitted over his nose and mouth, and several tubes ran between his body and a hemofiltration machine. Vinyl curtains enclosed the area around his bed. A machine that regulates electrolytes and removes waste products from the blood in lieu of the kidneys. Ah, yes. Used to assist patients with decreased kidney function, purifying the blood too quickly can however result in a collapse of the body's electrolyte balance, leading to headaches or muscle spasms. He was in an ICU, the intensive care unit, a clinical facility that allows for focused around-the-clock treatment and monitoring for patients with severe and life-threatening illnesses or injuries, also used for patients whose conditions might potentially become critical or for patients requiring an extreme degree of care following surgery. Several people bustled frantically about. The last thing Taki remembered was being in his room. Was that minutes ago? Or has it been days? Excuse me. Could someone... Takia paused. His voice didn't even sound like his own. Doctor, he's regained consciousness, a nurse announced. At that, the face of his attending physician, Dr. Saike, suddenly came into view. He was wearing an operating mask. Takia, the doctor said, please hang in there. Takia, it sounded like his father and mother were there on the other side of the curtain. If the staff had called them here, did that mean he was on the brink? What day is it? What was that? Respirator was making Taki's voice hard to understand. He struggled to form the words. Today. What day is it? It's April 5th. April 5th. There were still over 3 weeks to go until his 15th birthday. What was going on? It's too late to save me, isn't it? You mustn't say things like that. How much longer do I have? Will I make it another month? Psyche lowered his eyes. No guarantees, then. Please, doctor. I just need 3 more weeks. Do whatever you can to let me live for just 3 more weeks. Can't die yet. Dr. Psyche nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. Is there something you can do? Please? I don't want to die yet. I haven't done anything yet. Please, just a little more time. There's a life-prolonging procedure, highly experimental. However, I don't care about the risks. Just don't want to die yet. There's something called an artificial liver system. Clinical trials have only just been concluded in Japan. Although a liver dialysis machine can be thought of as a sort of artificial liver, an actual liver carries out much more complicated metabolic reactions that dialysis cannot completely replace. For this reason, biohybrid liver replacements, combining mechanical functions with active live liver cells from pigs, are currently under research, with clinical tests have been conducted in the United States. The hope is that these bioartificial devices will someday be able to keep those with failed livers alive until the necessary transplants are available. It's a device that uses cells harvested from pigs. If things go well, rather than just 3 weeks, it might be possible to keep you alive until a donor turns up. The mention of pig cells was startling, but right now was no time to be squeamish. Please, doctor, if there's even the slightest chance, it's worth it. Okay. Scott. Not what I expected. After Takia was rushed to the ICU, Suzume went to check up on him every day without regard for her own well-being. Day after day she visited only to be told that he was still in an unconscious state. 3 weeks went by without a change. Then one morning, while passing by the kitchenette on her way to the ICU, Suzume overheard some nurses talking. Did you hear? Takia's regained consciousness. For better or for worse, poor kid. He keeps saying that he doesn't want to die yet, that he wants to live. He's only, 14? The young nurse's voice was tearful. Suzume felt a new kind of pain in her chest. He's running out of time for a transplant. And with that rare blood type... Rare blood type? Suzume stopped in her tracks, then rushed back to the kitchenette. Excuse me, what do you mean by rare blood type? The moment she saw Suzume, the nurses clammed up and tried to slip away. Please hold on. That rare blood type. Is it Bombay? Suzume shouted. The nurses exchanged an awkward look with one another, and though neither of them said anything, Suzume knew that she was right. Ah, this is why he had to wait till he was 15. Because it's gonna be some sort of thing where he needs to be 15 in order to, like... Alright. Takia has Bombay blood, too. This was a hospital with high-end facilities that drew patients with incurable diseases from all over the country, so maybe it wasn't such a remarkable coincidence. Transfusions for rare blood types such as Bombay were difficult to come by at regional hospitals. There were some advantages to having another such patient on hand nearby, but there were downsides too. Now the inexplicable behavior of the doctors and nurses made sense. They'd been trying to keep Suzune and Takeo from each other, discovering that the other had Bombay blood. It was unsettling enough to know that someone else with a blood type only possessed by a few dozen other people in all of Japan was hospitalized right alongside you. But when both of you were waiting for compatible donors in the hope of receiving a transplant, that was enough to upset anyone's composure. How must Takeo have felt when she told him that she had Bombay blood as well? If I die, she could live. Something like that must have crossed his mind. The fact that he'd started studying about transplants again must mean he'd been thinking of something. What in the world was he thinking? If our positions were reversed, what would I have done? Suzune knew that what she had to do. She headed for the ICU. She got there just as Dr. Saiki, who was her own attending physician as well, emerged from inside. Miss Endo. The doctor stopped, surprised. Suzune drew herself upright and looked at him right in the eye. Doctor, please use my liver for a transplant for Takeo. You can perform a living liver transplant, right? If you need to take half or even 2/3 of it, then please, by all means. For a moment, Dr. Saiki looked as if he'd taken a punch to the face, but soon his expression resolved into a sad smile. You heard about the blood? Suzune nodded. I'm afraid that won't be possible. A living liver transplant is dangerous enough for a healthy person. Someone in your condition would never be able to tolerate the surgery. You can do it when my time comes then, Suzune said. Regardless, Miss Endo, I can't carry out a living liver transplant between complete strangers. The law doesn't allow it. If the two of you got married, that would be a different story, but that's not possible either. Okay. Neither you nor Takeo can legally marry until you're 18. Okay. I was gonna say, if that turns into a 15 thing, I'm just gonna be married. Suzune had never thought about such a thing, but if marrying Takeo would make the surgery possible, she'd do whatever it took. But apparently the law wasn't going to allow for that either. Well, I don't care what the law says. If I'm the only person who could save Takeo, then please take my liver. Doctor, please. I'm afraid what you're asking simply can't be done. You need to focus on your own condition and on getting better yourself. I'm beyond saving anyway, though, right? So please, I'm begging you, Takeo needs... As Suzune grabbed the hold of the doctor's gown, pleading, a sharp pain shot through her chest. The galloping heartbeat was back. No, her pulse had never been quite this erratic before. Her mouth opened and closed reflexively. She was unable to breathe. Doctor, please. An electrical shock went through her from the implanted defibrillator. The world faded as she slowly collapsed to the floor. Yeah, I think we all know how this is going to end. Good music. Suzune had a long, long dream. Her father was in that dream, and though Suzune couldn't clearly remember her face, her late mother was there too, trying desperately to save her. And then there was Takeo. Takeo was smiling. A genuine smile. A smile that Suzune had never seen. Takeo's mouth was moving, but no sound came out. She tried to read his lips. It spells out thank you. Thank you? Wait, what do you mean? Suzune cried out as she woke. She was staring up at a familiar ceiling. She was back in her own room. She spotted her older brother Achi sleeping in a folding chair nearby. I see. There's a jump coming up that leads back to the epilogue of the main story. We may have to do it real quick in order to unlock a thing later. Like now, or like... Can I come back in here? I admit, I was not expecting a jump just to show up. Trying to skip it all does take a while. So, is it better that I do the jump now, or... You would do it now? Alright, well, let's do it now then. So this just takes me here. But I can just... Okay, good. Bum, bum, bum. Alright, fine. Be that way, game. Take me to the time chart. Right. Game, please. Wait. Can I use that just to jump back? Lets me go this far. Does this work? Or this will let me go back. Yeah, okay, cool. She spotted her older brother Achi sleeping in a folding chair nearby. Achi? The word creaked raspily from her throat. Huh? Suzune, you awake? Her brother rose from the chair, then excitedly scampered out of the room. With a start, Suzune realized something was attached to her chest. She felt a peculiar sensation, 6 distinct tingles all running from the center to the left side of her chest. Electrocardiograph electrodes. She followed the leads that ran from her chest to the monitor by her pillow, and was surprised to see the waveform moving across it. It was her pulse, and amazingly, the rhythm was solid and strong. Nothing like the one she'd been familiar with for so long. No, that's not my pulse. Suzune realized what she was seeing. She understood instinctively. This heart, it was Takia's. As she returned with Dr. Seiki, who proceeded to check the various monitoring devices by the bed. nodding and smiling with satisfaction. It's good to see you awake again. For now, there don't appear to be any signs of rejection. Of course, we'll need to be vigilant, but this new heart seems to be a good match for you, Miss Endo. It's Takia's, isn't it? Please tell me it's not. I told you I wanted him to have my liver. Takia was dead. If she had his heart now, there was no way he was still alive. Dr. Seiki looked away, and for a while he said nothing. When it comes to who your donor is, I'm not at liberty to say anything. You understand that, right? So instead, let me tell you how things went for Takia in the end. You two were friends. Boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe. Either way, you have a right to know about his passing. Takia's passing. Suzume had already imagined as much, but now she couldn't hold back the tears. Takia is dead. He's dead. Dr. Seiki went on. Takia begged me to help him keep him alive just a little bit longer. His family agreed, and so we proceeded with an artificial liver system, a treatment that's relatively untested here in Japan. For a while his symptoms abated, and he even regained his consciousness. The doctor took a breath, but it was already too late. He lapsed into a coma due to acute liver failure, and then developed complications, a condition known as DIC, which causes clotting in blood vessels throughout the body. Initially, we thought he might have hepatic encephalopathy, but a CT scan of the head revealed cerebral edema. He was declared brain dead 2 days after his birthday. He was 15 years old. Dr. Seiki gave her a significant look. Suzume wondered what that implied. He was insistent that he make it to 15, Seiki continued. He said there was something he absolutely needed to do. On his birthday, he called for his family and told them, I want to register as an organ donor. Huh? Here in Japan, individuals under 15 years of age aren't allowed to give consent for organ donation. If Takia had died before he turned 15, then his heart, all of his organs rather, could not have been provided to a patient in need. And that was something he wished for very much. Takia had been reading up and studying, and he learned that he needed to survive until he turned 15. And he asked for life-prolonging measures to be taken, also that he could register as a donor in order to give me his heart. And I don't know who it was, but apparently a surgeon was able to perform a transplant for a patient believed to be an ideal match for his heart. Evidently, this patient was also comatose and in an extremely dire state, but from what I hear, the surgery seems to have gone quite well. Of course, I do not know the identity of the patient either. Suzume strained to move her right hand, setting it atop her chest. Underneath the layers of bandages, she could feel a heartbeat, steady and strong. Takia's heart is beating within me. He left a letter for you. I haven't looked at what's inside, so I'm not sure what it says. Dr. Seiki set a white envelope down on the bedside table, then left the room. Achi, read it to me? She didn't feel strong enough to read it herself, but she didn't want to wait. You sure? Achi asked. Alright then, let's see. Achi opened the envelope, slid the letter out, and began to read. Suzume. If you're reading this letter, that means everything has gone well. Congratulations. And also thank you. Ever since I became sick, no, even before then, I hadn't known what it was like to be happy. I hated the world. I went through my whole life just thinking about how pointless my existence was, an excuse for a human being with no reason to live. What did it matter if I was here or not? I hated that I was going to die so young, but at the same time, it seemed pointless to try to live any longer. And then I met you. I fell in love with you. I love you, Suzume. With all of my heart. you in this world, I wanted to go on living a little longer, because living would actually have some meaning. When I found out that we had the same blood, I was shocked. It had to be fate, right? Neither of us was going to be able to survive on our own, but if one of us sacrificed ourselves for the other one could go on living, and I wouldn't be able to bear any world without you in it, Susanne. The answer was clear. I want you to have my heart, Susanne. That's the best possible thing. For the both of us. You're probably a little sad, knowing that I'm gone now. I'll be happy if that's the case. But will you please be happy for me, now that my heart is inside you? That would make me even happier. Happier than anything. Thank you so much for taking my heart. It'll beat for you as hard as it can. I hope. I wish we could have talked more. If it only been possible, I would have liked to have gone somewhere with you. But it's okay. This way I get to be with you forever. I won't be lonely anymore. Goodbye. I'm looking forward to our future together. Takayas Kazama. Ugh. Achi's voice grew gradually more hoarse as he read. By the end he was struggling not to weep. Damn it, did it really have to be like this? Susanne was more astounded than she was sad. Of course she was upset that Takia had died, and she was glad that she was going to live. But above all, she was amazed by the fact that Takia had cared for her as much as he had. That he'd fought so hard to prolong his own life just to save hers. That moved her more deeply than anything she'd ever known. Maybe a young crush couldn't be called real love, but that didn't make it any less pure. Thank you. Goodbye. I'm looking forward to our future together. Whoa, there's separate credits? Alright. I guess there'd have to be. Nurse from Dream. Alright, so not a ghost nurse, but definitely not a real nurse. I suppose it's true. Dream could be ghost nurse too. This game has so much in it. We haven't even touched the anime yet. Yeah. There's so many good things about this game. Like, sure, it's got like some translation spelling weirdness, but really good characters. So many emotions. Thank you for that cheer, kitty. So much time jumping. I really enjoy their mix of still photography and video they've gone with. Like, I kind of can't believe that they didn't do another game like this in the same vein. Ooh, fancy. Very pretty. And the anime portion's just like, what? We haven't even really done that yet. Alright. Are y'all ready for this? I still can't believe there's just this anime character sitting here. She moves. Alright, here we go. F me up on anime. Alfred L. Shua. The solitary serpent. The snake has lost 8 of its 9 heads. What? In the Middle East, the snake is seen as an ill omen, and those who take it as their name are said to be both wicked and extremely cunning. Okay. I'm excited for the anime. If I give in to sentimentality, I will have lost my light all over again. The blue sun rose into the sky. As the girl rushed through the airport, she met with the intense light of the summery dawn. April 28th, 8:21 a.m., Singapore, Changi Airport. She let out a weary breath. A shaft of sunlight blazed across her face, and she squinted her eyes against the glare. The night had been a long one, and she could feel exhaustion taking hold. She wanted to stop and sink into one of the sofas in the airport lounge, but she didn't have time for that now. Oh, there's voicing. Was it all just a diversion? Who the hell does she think she is? Just tossing people away like that. Are the fringe groups of her own organization nothing more than Halva to her? Halva, also known by other names including Halawa and Halewa. A popular confection throughout the Arab world, typically made with ingredients such as sesame, apricots, or grains kneaded together with sugar and some type of oil or fat. It is said to have originated in ancient Mesopotamia. I am probably pronouncing all of those wrong. Muttering curses that seemed at odds with her young face, the girl wove her way gracefully through the sea of travelers. Time was of the essence. All she had in her hidden back pocket were some dollar bills. The dollar is the unit of currency in several countries, including Canada and Australia, but here it refers to the United States dollar, controlled by the Federal Reserve Bank. At the time of the story, it is frequently used alongside the euro as a standard currency for international transactions. She was just going to have to acquire the gear she needed on site. It galled her to be so under-equipped. The only consolation was that at least she'd been able to arrange for a boarding pass in time.
あるあるさ。
Uh-huh. Cannon refocused instantly at an unfamiliar man, addressed her in Arabic. Was he a thief, or some more dangerous third party? This was a country where both one's money and one's life could easily be at risk. She had one way to find out what kind of threat she was dealing with.
日本行きの便はどれ？
Which gate is the flight to Japan? Her voice was sweet and girlishly soft. The man gasped. He hadn't been expecting this. They hadn't told him what he was really in for. This girl was the natural enemy of the Serpent, a steely soldier in a proxy war, a professional freelancer who took any requests and who always carried out her mission. A mere hour earlier, she'd taken out an armed syndicate, 30 members strong, the red flowers of blood left in her wake, a testament to her rumored capabilities. The man was dumbstruck. What kind of twisted fairy tale was this, with mercenaries who looked like sweet little girls?
何？手配はできなかった？
What's wrong? Were you not able to make the arrangements? If this just turns into Fate's Day Night, that's...
いや、搭乗は6番ゲート。ファーストチケットなら。
No, everything's fine, he said hurriedly. The flight is departing from Gate 6. If you're looking for your pass and your
分
ticket...
かってる。右のポケットでしょ。すごいな。渡されるまで気づかなかった。
They're in my right pocket. That was impressive. I didn't notice until you'd already handed them off. The man gasped again. His surprise shifted to caution. With all the bystanders around, it should have been easy enough to make a handoff without even the recipient ever noticing. He was proud of his skills, but still she'd seen right through him.
落ち込まなくていいよ。あなた、入り口で電話をしていた人でしょ。
Don't feel bad. At least I didn't spot you in advance.
私はあなただって分かってたのに、渡されるまで気づかなかった。
You're the man I spoke to on the phone outside, right? Cannon asked.
それってすごいことだ。
That was quite the feat.
私、あんまり人は尊敬しないんだけど。
I don't offer praise like this lightly, but I'm legitimately impressed. She's known since the moment I arrived, he thought, and she hadn't figured it out from his appearance. She'd just intuited it somehow. She'd also immediately sensed that he was ashamed, even though he kept his face a perfect blank.
恐れ入った。
Nicely
蛇
done.
の天敵というのは
I
間違
see
い
why
で
they
は
call
な
you
さ
the
そう
natural enemy of the serpent.
一度も
That
殺して
seems
な
a
いの
little
に天敵って
premature,
いうのは
seeing as how I haven't killed it yet. First, the girl had acted deliberately blasé. Now she was being downright cynical. She's a little unstable. And totally adorable. He had to remind himself that this was her. How many soldiers must she have killed? How many battlefields had she survived? Hers was the life of a professional assassin. The fact that she had retained apparent normalcy in the midst of such disorder was more than a little unsettling. The man was astonished that this was the famed rival of the serpent. One did not strike at the snake without exceptional cunning and skill. Hers was the perfect camouflage, a mercenary in the guise of a child. Well, so long as we're on the same page.
別にいいよ。それで話の裏は取れた。
Did you look into that story I asked you about?
が確認はと
Yes, I was able to confirm it.
大越製薬研究所所
The
長
director of
大谷
Okoshi
さん
Pharmaceutical,
確かに
Osawa, his daughter has indeed been kidnapped.
こちらのセルの活発化は
We should consider the increase in cell activity on our end to be a mere diversion. Cell. In order to avoid being compromised, anti-government organizations that carry out illegal activities, as well as terrorist groups, frequently organize themselves into smaller subgroups known as cells. Typically, only the leader of each cell knows how to contact the upper echelons. Thus, rank-and-file members who are exposed and arrested are incapable of leaking information about the larger organization to outsiders. The name cell is taken from the biological structure. Neat. Kanan gritted her teeth. Her latest mission, concluded just an hour ago, had been to meet with this armed group, the Serpent. That was fine. Everything had gone off splendidly without a hitch. The job had been easier than she'd imagined. There was no cause to get bent out of shape. But the info she'd gotten her hands on had done quite a number on her mood. The Serpent herself is on the move. Japan, Shibuya, Okoshi Pharmaceutical, possible CIA involvement, presumed large-scale urban terrorism at work. That message had lifted the veil from her eyes. At long last, Alfred herself was out in the open, the head of the snake exposed. What a perfect opportunity to cut it off. But of all places to set the stage, Japan? CIA involvement would pose a problem. She wouldn't be surprised if the Serpent had already coiled itself around the Americans. When it came to the Serpent, not even the US government could be trusted to keep itself free of influence. And the target was Okoshi Pharmaceutical? If that wasn't a sign, she didn't know what was. Was that just a coincidence? No. Allah was Al-Qadir, all-powerful. Yet the girl frowned in disappointment. What need would he have to go so far to pen such a perfect tale? She had thought such grand acts of fate were a relic of the distant past. But she could sense its hand in these events. She hurried to get the intel confirmed at once, and had quickly arranged a flight to Japan. Maybe she was a freelancer, not aligned with any particular organization, but she still had connections. She had many tools in her arsenal. People were often the most convenient. If they excelled at what they did, so much the better. Many individuals sought to curry her favor. Sympathizers, like the man who'd made the handoff here, who would intervene on her behalf. Groups or individual activists who favor a particular political organization or ideology, and who demonstrate support without directly participating in the faction's activities.
ありがとう。
Thank you, she said.
じゃあ行くけど、
Is there anything
他に
else you
何
need
か
to
言
tell
わ
me
れてる？
before I go?
現地に一人ワキールを用意した。
A vakil has been arranged to act as your representative on site.
渋谷への足を用意しています。
Apparently he's put together a way to get you to
貨物
Shibuya.
室から降りられるよう
After
に
you've landed, drop out of the hold. You'll be able to head off directly from the runway, the man said.
が無駄足になら
I
ない
pray
よう
this will
に
not be a fool's errand, for your sake. I admit
思いのほか
surprise that our
ラフィーク・カナン
Amir holds such
我ら
respect
の
and
兄
fondness
か
for
ら高い信
you,
頼と敬愛を受け
Rafiq
て
Kanan.
今回は最悪
He hopes that you will not
痛み分けでいい
fail,
そう
of course. But should you do, that you will be at least go down fighting. She sighed. Go down fighting? So it's okay to die as long as I take the target down with me? The man thought of nothing but his honor, his pride. No reconciliation, no negotiation, no submission. 3 tenets that mattered more than preventing bloodshed. Whatever designs these two organizations had on each other were of no concern to her. But even so,
言われなくても、
I don't need the warning.
3度目なんて死んでもごめんな。
I have no intention of dying a third time. For once, her client's wishes aligned perfectly with her own. Her flaxen hair trailed behind her as she went to board her plane. She didn't look back. The flight from Singapore to Japan was roughly 7 hours. The Serpent had surely anticipated that her enemy would pursue her there. In all likelihood, there would be a minimal window between Cannon's arrival in Japan and the Serpent's plan coming to fruition.
ほんと、少年が腐ってる。
She really does love sinking to no blows. The Serpent wouldn't be so clumsy as to let someone from back home in the Middle East, especially a foe like Cannon, find out about this by accident. If she'd let that plan leak, that meant it suited her purposes somehow. It would seem she wanted to entice Cannon to risk hope before trampling her underfoot. You won't lay a finger on me. The voice sneered at her, a backstage murmur in her mind. She dealt with the enemy's diversion, learned of the plan just in the nick of time, and rushed off to Japan without a second's hesitation. Japan was where it would all be decided. If she didn't do battle with the Serpent, she would lose yet another close friend. Had the Serpent engineered the situation simply to torment her?
けど、今回は少し予定が違う。
But things aren't going to go how you think this time.
渋谷の文字は
Shibuya is a
お
poor
前
fit
と
for
相性
you.
が悪い。
She spoke to herself to calm her gnawing impatience. The time it took to write Shibuya and the time it took to write Alfred were nearly the same, but but the youthful and complex nature of the city of Shibuya won out. Her instincts were something akin to fortune-telling, a tendency to reimagine the world around her in a way that was neither wishful thinking nor sour grapes. She had a sense of conviction that hovered near the truth, but she knew she couldn't let herself be optimistic. The serpent possessed a powerful venom. It was possible that, even if Alfred's plan were foiled, the life Cannon hoped to save would still be lost. There truly was no time to spare. Crushing the fringe group in Singapore had gone more quickly than she'd anticipated. She had planned on obliterating them at the break of dawn, but she had been struck by a sudden familiar sense of urgency and had acted an hour ahead of schedule. That change of plans had led to this. She had obtained the intel just slightly earlier than Alfred might have anticipated, and had put speed above all else in arranging the trip to Japan. Right now, she could only hope that the single hour she'd bought herself would let her save her friend's life.
Maria.
A warm red flooded her mind. They'd met 2 years ago. She remembered the day as an ordinary one. An unassuming tourist was getting hassled by the same sorts of guys that caused trouble all over the world. Cannon's stash of her favorite snack had just run out, and it left her in an irritable mood. Maybe that was why she'd stopped at the sight of the scuffle. Not that she had any interest in helping. The men just gave off an eyesore of a color. Their scent was far too noisy, and she wanted to be rid of them. Shukran Jazalan, said the grateful tourist, her hand outstretched. She asked if Cannon would be her guide, which Cannon tried to ignore, but the young woman persisted. This girl was a person raised in peace, from a peaceful country. Cannon wasn't the kind to hold that against her, or rail against the unfairness of the world. It didn't mean she wanted to put up with it either. A Yabaniya like her was practically a different species. How could they even understand each other? Cannon was closer to an animal herself, and respectable people didn't get close to animals that were still untamed. Humans had overcome their feral side. They had become creatures of intellect. When such intellect was fostered over the years, the benefits were clear. And yet... Let's be friends, Sadiq. How about it? This tourist approached her, oblivious. Cannon could recall the warm color of that moment. It still triggered her memories. It was a pleasant color, one that she had been touched by before. This tourist, Maria, was not so remarkable as to draw the eye. Nothing about her seemed especially worthy of admiration. There was just something special about the wholesome smile she offered to the dangerous creature she should never have approached.
そっか。天然なんだ。
You're very spontaneous, aren't you? Cannon smiled. There was something powerful about people who couldn't get a read on their own situation. It was the first time she'd smiled earnestly in a long while. The first time since she'd lost her light the second time. It would still be several hours before the plane landed in Japan. She did her best to ease her inner tension, to let herself rest in preparation for combat. Her orders were simple. Save her friend, capture the serpent. The objective was the same as it had been before. That summer, 4 years ago, when she'd gotten the tattoo on her left arm. That very long day, when she'd been reborn as the Cannon she was now. It's amazing what you can do with some still images and a little bit of camera movement. The rumbling of a diesel engine sounded in her ears. The color that went with that sound indicated that the engine was running well. The interior of the compartment was rife with the smell of rammel, of sand. dangerous blue, a gentle red, a painful yellow. Those, the colors of the people aboard the train as it chugged along. The train had set out from Al-Haditha, northwest of Baghdad, and after a journey of 300 kilometers, it was approaching the Jordan border. At the front of the train was an antique diesel locomotive. This was followed by first-class carriages, coach-class carriages, and also several of the women-only carriages unique to the Middle East. It was a long train, though not exceptionally so. In some Islamic countries where men and women are prohibited from sitting together for religious reasons, women-only train cars are common. Depending on the country, the sexual segregation may be so strict as to apply even to children. Sometimes even young boys must separate from their mothers in order to ride in men-only carriages. It was remarkable that there was a line running between Iraq and Jordan. Traffic between the two countries, especially via railway, had been drastically reduced as a result of war. Many of the lines had long since fallen into disuse. But now that the West was working towards the reconstruction and stabilization of Iraq, Japan had also helped plan a railway between Iraq and Jordan, and had laid down a temporary rail line. The train's final stop was not the border, but 300 kilometers beyond it, in Amman, the Jordanian capital. This trip would be a turning point. Sundown would see the venerable old train service come to an end. The compartment where Cannon rode was boisterous with noise and human energy. Wind and the sound of chugging wheels rushed in together through the windows with no glass. As the only rail service currently linking Iraq and Jordan, the new line drew passengers from all walks of life. A freelance journalist returning from Baghdad, an Indian peddler carrying a piece of luggage larger than himself, a group of women who appeared to be members of some Scandinavian NGO. No one seemed bothered by the clamor. The passengers shouted and prattled on as they pleased. Various sounds, miscellaneous colors, profuse scents, myriad textures, manifold flavors, all these sensations mixed together as if in a stew pot, and Cannon gulped them down. Yet the stimulation they provided was weak. It was like lamb without enough salt, and so she reached into her pocket for a dose of her favorite pick-me-up, crunching it between her teeth. Cannon was in a foul mood. She was on this train to do a job, but nothing had happened for 3 hours now. So far the journey had proceeded without incident, and she'd had no opportunity to act. Sam, the man she called Sharik, had assigned her this mission. They were traveling together. Theirs was a rare team. No longer were they Mudarib and Mutadarib, master and student. They were partners now. Still, this was a complete letdown. The atmosphere on the train set her on edge. Despite the instability of present-day Iraq, there were no soldiers abroad, only several policemen. Supposedly, this limitation of the military presence was all out of concern for the complicated political situation, but she couldn't help but wonder if it was more concern for saving money on soldiers' pay. The major powers touted peace while enforcing virtue, when they could be bothered. This railway was just one more example of their dubious policies, supposedly established to help foster interpersonal exchange and economic revitalization. It had originally been used for military transport until public travel was more useful to somebody's agenda. This is so boring. Here we are, the carefree passengers of a modern conveyance, operated by a well-intentioned international cooperation. Whoever owns this outfit has grown fat on peace. Don't be so cynical, her companion said. Do you really distrust the intentions of others so much? The only one I trust is you. I just figured having you around would make our jobs a lot more fun. I'm not mad or anything. It's a good thing, but not being too particular. Just keep in mind that whether we align with the good guys or the bad guys depends on the job. So-called virtue has no value unless it provides some real benefit to somebody. Otherwise, it's just a bother. Virtue, Cannon sniffed. Virtue was just another name individuals gave to their own biased sense of justice. A rigid and fanatical concept subject to any number of arbitrary beliefs. One man's virtue was another man's depravity. The very idea made her think of those interminable meetings between political factions. People puffed themselves up as wise and sat at the conference table without the slightest interest in the other side's values. To them, all that mattered was that they had already decided was good and right.
損得がない。
Some real benefit to somebody,
どうすれば利益
so
が
they
出
know how
る
to
のか
profit and how
ど
to
うすれば
survive
生き残れ
and
る
still
のか
manage to not go for the
目
money
先の
that's
お
right
金に
under
は
their
転ばない
noses?
こともっと派手に人生
Can
そのもの
someone
を
really
つま
live?
ずき続ける
Can someone really keep living their life like that without eventually stumbling?
客観的に見れば
You need to look at things objectively.
安酒のようなもの。
Simple moral philosophy
そ
is
れは手
like
に
cheap
入れやす
booze.
く悪いを意
It's
識
easy
が
to
す
get your hands on and easily makes you sick.
る。泥酔している人間
You
に
can't
話し合
expect
い
to
が
get
期
through
待で
to
きない。
someone who's dead drunk
説得するより
before you can convince them
まず
on
腹元
your
で
point.
酒を抜
You
か
need
な
to
きゃ
beat
な
the
らない。
alcohol out of them.
例えば眉間を
Like
秒
by
速
up
で
and
打ち
putting a
抜いて
bullet between their eyes?
あ
Perhaps.
あまあ
If
頭
it's
に
the
アルコ
brain
ールが
that's
詰まっ
drunk.
ているかは疑問だ。
The man named Siam curled up the corners of his mouth. Though he wasn't a fundamentalist Muslim, he still detested alcohol as a tool of the devil. But his use of booze as a metaphor now was inspired less by his inner demons than by his unique sense of humor.
もう笑わない方が
I
いいって
told
言
you
っ
to
たの
stop
に
smiling.
じゃあ笑うと
It
顔
makes
が
you look
怖いんだか
creepy.
ら
Harsh, yes, but it needed to be said. Sam's smile was a rare bird newly come to roost. The two had known each other for several years now. Back in the day, she had never known him to smile. As a change of habit, it felt unsettling, like a sort of surprise attack.
知っている。
I
そう
know.
忠告されて
I've
以
been
来
trying my
笑わない
best
よう
not to ever
努めていた。
since you first gave me that bit of advice.
まあ、俺たちの
Anyway,
雇い主は
our employer
金融王国
values
として
austerity. Not smiling
笑
ought
わ
to
ない
be
と
our
いうの
general
は方針
policy.
に合っているだろう。
Cannon herself was equally guilty of a rare display. Her own sour expression had completely turned around. The only time she expressed human-like joy was when she and Siam were alone together. Her name was Cannon. Trained by Siam, a veteran mercenary, she had just turned 14 years old. Cannon was not her real name, but a nickname given to her 2 years prior. Hers was a familiar story, that of a child who had lost her parents and her village to the ravages of war. Unlike most who shared such a beginning, however, she had 2 major strokes of luck. The first was the ability that she had been born with. The second was that she'd met someone who taught her how to foster that ability. As a girl orphaned by war, she'd almost inevitably taken up arms. Making herself useful to the powers that surrounded her had been the only way to survive. The only people who she could depend on, the only ones who gave her anything, were them. The moment she didn't meet their expectations, she would go back to being a mere orphan. And so this girl, a victim of war, fell under the protection of the warmongers and was trained to be one of their soldiers. But then, she was picked up by a man, Siam, who freed her from those who had robbed her of her past. He had no ideology. He was unlike the others she had known in her broken world, the wandering people who had formed a new nation to be their promised land. And the ones they had driven out, now wanderers themselves who styled themselves liberators. Siam was a mercenary who had been hired by those would-be liberators, but he paid no heed to the ideologies of either side. He was a soldier who lived to fight, knowing he was unlikely to see the conflicts end during his lifetime. Cannon didn't know how long Siam had been working as a mercenary. By the time she'd wound up in his care, he was already a veteran worthy of her confidence. He told her that he'd been kicked out of the army, that he preferred solo missions where he could focus on his objective without worrying about fellow operatives. In that case, he was something closer to an agent provocateur. Not sure, than an ordinary mercenary. Siam was well aware of his distinct style and position. He sometimes revealed a hint of shame at the fact that the assignments he was given were not officially missions, Uhima, but instead were referred to as jobs, Yamal. Still, he was known as a valuable asset on the liberation front. They were a guerrilla organization facing off against superior Israeli forces. A lone mercenary who could carry out major operations by himself, he had fit in well with the guerrilla's strategy. The fact that he was disposable if and when the time came was also quite appealing. and Cannon, once Siam took her in, had grown not as a soldier, but as a specialized covert operative. That was her good fortune. The orphan's talents weren't particularly well suited to acting as part of a unit. She was far better at being a solo diversionist, acting against the enemy organization. And so she had ceased to be a soldier, instead training as a diversionist. She fulfilled her new role adeptly. Siam and Cannon, they worked in concert as secret agents, infiltrating, gathering intel, conducting sabotage. She'd learned to operate without backup. Typically, one of the duo would sneak into enemy territory alone, while the other acted in a logistics or liaison role. Here and now, however, with their objective aboard this moving train, responding to an urgent request from their employer, the two were working together as a team.
でも列車で輸送する
So,
って
if this train is the
そんなに大きなものなの？
transport, the objective must be something big, right?
いや物自体は
No.
個人で所
What
有
we're
でき
after
る
is apparently small enough to be carried on one's person.
中身は俺たちの
We're not authorized to look at the contents.
事実として
The first
それがある
task
か
is
ないか
simply
の
to
確認
confirm
を
whether
する
it's really on board or not.
なんだ
Well,
それならもう
in that case, the job's done.
私とシャムで見
We've
て回
both
った
been
んだ
looking
から
around, and I
間違
think
いない
it's
よ
pretty clear.
この列車は外れ
This train is a bust,
どこをどう
Cannon
見
sighed.
ても普通の車両だし
There's nothing out of the
おかし
ordinary
な
about
手
it,
触りも
and it doesn't feel wrong either.
輸送の予定が一日
Either
ず
they're
れた
moving our objective at some other time, they got word that we would be here,
そもそも
or there was no
初め
such
から
plan
そ
in
ん
the
な計
first
画は
place.
なかったってとこじゃない
いや
No, the intel's solid. I trust the person who provided
信
it.
用できる提供者だからな
They'd received the intelligence just 2 days prior. Even by their own fast-moving standards, this job was inordinately rushed. A member of an American military deployed in Iraq has contacted a Mossad agent. Indications suggests plan to deliver and hand over weapon. The Israeli Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations. Mossad conducts foreign intelligence gathering and counter-terrorist operations along with covert infiltration and the like. It's one of the arms of the Israeli intelligence community along with the entities such as the Shabak, Israel Security Agency, which handles domestic counterintelligence historically. The director of Mossad has acted as the governing chairperson of these agencies. Mossad is regarded as one of the premier intelligence agencies in the world. Neat. Board Iraq, Jordan, railway, and gather intel. Recover payload if possible. Destroy if not. Weapon to be transferred, enemy escort, and loadout all unknown. No logistical support will be provided during operation. I was uncertain why the enemy had chosen to move the mystery weapon along such a dangerous overland route, but the information came from a source that both Siam and the Liberation Front trusted absolutely. And the source had made it clear that the enemy forces were in a hurry to transfer this unknown new weapon. This was a tip that the Liberation Front could not overlook, and they'd directed Siam to act immediately. The situation was somewhat delicate because the enemy had decided to use a train that crossed the border as their means of transport. Given the tenuous political balance in the region, the Liberation Front couldn't risk open military action targeting an international train running from Iraq to Jordan. Political pressure from Israel and the US might not have led the Jordanian government to give tacit consent to weapons transfer. But if the freedom fighters intervened on a large scale, it would surely invite a military response. Worst case, things might spiral out of control and trigger yet another full-scale war in the Middle East. Thus, the job at hand required utmost secrecy. The enemy would disavow involvement in any clandestine transport, and those who moved against them must be similarly able to deny any involvement. Stopping and destroying the secret payload was a job for covert agents. And so Siam and Cannon had hurriedly boarded the train, where they'd been spending their time staring out the window. 4 hours had passed without any incident aboard. Now they were arriving at the halfway point in their journey, the Jordanian border. There, abruptly things began to change. Without warning, the train, which had hitherto seemed like a promise of safe passage, grew thick with the dangerous scent of an escort convoy.
馬車の変更
They're making adjustments to the train.
何それ
What's up with that, Cyan?
そんなの聞いてな
I
い
didn't
し
hear that
聞いた
announced.
こともないでしょ
I've never heard of that happening mid-journey.
レール幅の問題だ。
The problem is with the
レールは
rails.
スタンダードゲージ
The
だ。
ones we've been running on are
ここからは
standard gauge.
ロシアの援助
Past this point, the tracks are all
ミリのブロードゲージ
1,524 millimeters broad gauge that were installed with the assistance from the Russians. Standard gauge. Railway track with a 1435 millimeter, 4 foot 8.5 inches, space between the rails. It is the standard in the United Kingdom, where it originated, and due to internationalization, an estimated 60% or more of the world's railways use standard gauge. Broad gauge. Railway with track spaced further apart than standard gauge. The broader gauge offers some advantages, such as improved stability for cars and better resistance to crosswinds. Russia, India, and Finland are among the countries that use broad gauge, along with some parts of Spain. Alright, train facts.
レール幅が異なる路線を
In order to run on the new rails, each of the train cars needs to be lifted up in sequence so their wheels can be replaced. The wheel exchange made for an extended delay. Each car in turn had to be removed from its couplings. Then each car was loaded onto a lift and refitted for the broad gauge tracks.
手間がかかるね
This is gonna take a while, Cannon grumbled.
ここから走れるでし
I
ょ
wish we could just transfer over to a train that could head on from here.
ダイヤのチームに文句を
Well, the passengers on this train aren't rich enough to complain about a delay in the schedule.
荷物を改め
This way, the rail company doesn't need to change up the cargo. So long as the train and the passengers arrive safely at the destination, that's all that matters. Yeah, I suppose. We of all people have no cause for complaint.
けどシャム
But Cyan... Cannon sensed that there was more going on than just switching over the train's wheels. The train was being expanded. A freight car, clearly meant to carry goods of higher quality, was being added, sandwiched between a new pair of passenger cars. A total of 3 new cars were added. The only passengers in the 2 compartments surrounding the freight car were armed soldiers.
青一色だ
They're all the same shade of
ど
blue.
ちらも7
7 soldiers per
合わ
car.
せて14
Total of 14.
これも予定
Were
内
you
だ
expecting this?
ここまでは考えま
No, I hadn't thought this far ahead.
他社の増設
Adding a new freight car, huh? Honestly, this would have been difficult to prepare for ahead of time. They were seeing a complex plan unfold, one that would be traceable after the fact, but which might be impossible to stop while it was in motion. They now faced a significant force of enemies that they might have to neutralize using only the firepower they had on their persons. Based on the orders Sam had received, there was 0 chance they'd receive any backup.
あいつらが兵士なのは間違いな
They're
い
definitely soldiers.
ど
Can't
こに
tell
所
what
属か
army
まで
though.
は見えない
彼らが乗客に偽装
They're
した兵
soldiers,
士で
disguised as
他社の
passengers.
加わったのなら
And if they're here with the freight car, it won't be an
イスラエ
issue.
ル側の兵士
The
かどうか
contents of those cars will tell us if they are Israeli soldiers or not.
そっか
I see.
今
So all we know right now is that they're not
私たち
onto
のこと
us.
はバレた連中
It
安
looks
全
like
だ
they've
と判断
decided that everything's safe.
そういうことだ
Our only stroke of luck so
問題
far.
は
The freight car transfer cast everything into doubt. It seemed to confirm that there was indeed a weapons delivery taking place, but recovering the payload was going to be more difficult than anticipated. Fruit, fruit. The train transfer process finished without a hitch. The other 2 passengers paid it little heed. Evidently, they were accustomed to this kind of delay. Fruit, fruit.
強引な計画だ
Quite the fix our client has put us in.
おかげで大
Can't
雨
call
の
for
ことも
backup, and we don't have a chance to resupply.
後先考えてみる
Fanatics never were very good at planning ahead, I
独特な善
suppose.
意が来るの
Or even stopping to sniff the air once in a while. Damn hardliners. Alas, the train left the border behind. There were no planned stops between the frontier and Amman. Kenan and Siam needed to complete the job before the train arrived in Amman, which meant within the next 4 hours. The odds were 2 against 14. A difference of power so great it seemed absurd even to consider a plan of attack.
ザイームの配置ミス
Your
だよ
Zaim messed up in assigning this mission, Cyan. This isn't a job for 2 people.
あからさまに
Given
来
how
るな
black things
いっそ
are,
爆破す
we
れ
should
ばいい
just destroy the whole payload.
停車中に攻めて
We should have planted some semtex back when the train was stopped. That's a plastic explosive. Developed in Czechoslovakia, it is clay-like and easily formed into different shapes. A similar type of explosive, Composition 4, or C4, used by the U.S. Armed Forces, is perhaps more famous. It is used by many military organizations due to its durability and ease of transport. That would be dramatic, but effective. If annihilation was our job, I'd have leaned that way too. They had checked the cars pretty thoroughly before they departed. Sneaking something aboard the freight car would probably have been close to impossible.
じゃあどうするの
So what do we do?
正面から銃
Taking
を
F-14 soldiers head
撃
on
つ
is a bit of a tall order. No,
そんな
we're
覚
gonna
悟を
take
す
that.
るまでも
We're not gonna take that big of a gamble.
人手なら
If you're worried
もう
about our
一人
numbers,
ここで合流する
that's going to change. Someone else is joining us here.
え
What? Cannon was shocked. She felt an unfamiliar kind of fear. As far as she had known, Siam never teamed up with anyone but her. Is it Alfred? It's
失
Alfred.
礼同席するよ
Pardon me, but I'd like to share your seat.
他の席は男ばかりでどうにも居づらいんでね
The others are all occupied by men, and I'd prefer not to sit with them. As soon as the stranger spoke, Cannon saw Siam's color shift to a pale, pale blue. A bad sign.
失礼同席するよ
Pardon me, the newcomer repeated. I'd like to share your seat. Her voice was low. The muscles in her arms were like taut, corded rope. To Cannon's eyes, her visage was a complex meld of shifting colors. Is this... It went without saying. This was their sole reinforcement, their third teammate.
構わない座ってくれ
We don't mind. Please sit.
どうも
Thanks. Say, mind letting me have your spot,
場
miss?
所を譲ってくれないかお嬢さん
Children should sit next to their
子供
guardian.
は保護者の
I should be
横
in
に
your
座るもの
place.
だ
Kennen sighed.
シャムお嬢さん
Sam,
は
this young lady hard of hearing?
それともアラ
Or
ビア
does she
語
just not speak Arabic?
カナ俺の横に座れ
Cannon, come sit next to
彼
me.
女は今回の
This is
情報
one of our
提供者
employers, the one who
我々
provided
の
our
雇い
intel.
主の一人
She's an old friend of mine.
俺とは古い馴染みでもある
Cannon said nothing. But she did get up from her seat and sit next to Siam. She'd do as he asked, although she didn't trust this woman. She didn't like the way he'd said old friend. It brought up all her natural cynicism.
ご挨拶だわ
Charmed, I'm sure.
シャム
Is this your kid,
こ
your
の子がお
backup,
前のバックアッ
Siam?
プか
いや今回俺は
No,
ダー
I'm the protection this time around. She's more suited to offense. Her skills are the real deal. So is her attitude.
目の前に相手がい
But
ない
she's not lookout material. She only really gets going when there's someone to fight.
それはそれ
Well, well.
はまだ
So
訓練
she's
中
still
と
in
いう
training?
わけか
The woman regarded Cannon with a cold gaze. She gave the impression of a snake trying to sense the body temperature of a potential prey.
いいね可愛いじゃない
She's cute.
タイプ
I approve.
でその左手は
How's her left
人
arm?
並みに動くのか
Can she move it all right?
訓練途中のお嬢
Or
さん
has your
は
little lady in
体の
training
管理
not
に
learned how to take care of herself yet? Cannon glared sidelong at the woman. She wasn't offended by the remark itself. The fact was that her left arm was still in pain. What unsettled her was that this woman's powers of perception, able to detect Cannon's injury through the heavy cloak she wore.
動くよ
It's just a
少し
scratch.
すりむいた
It won't be a problem.
そう
Okay,
ならいいが
but how did it
原
happen?
因は
Did you get it
傷
injured
をつけ
before
た
or
のは
after
列
you
車に
boarded
乗
the
る前
train?
だそれでお前がまだ
That'll tell me
半人
whether
前の
you're
兵
just
士
half a soldier or
ただの間
simply a
抜けたわ
fool. Cannon did not reply.
だんまり
Silent treatment, huh? Hey
おい
Sam,
シャム
which is it?
どっちなんだ
He didn't answer. Hmm? Has she seen something in that silence?
は
Ah, of course.
そういう
The stranger could read Siam's silence better than anyone, better than his own partner. The woman's stoic face grew just a shade brighter. Her smile was entirely sarcastic, but at least it was a display of human emotion. It was a smile as if to say, well done, as if Cannon's injury were some fated thing.
見たところ戦争孤児か
I'm guessing she's a war orphan?
たく
Seems you don't
懲り
learn.
ないなお前も
How long since you started working on her?
引き受けたのは2年
I
前
took her in 2 years ago. 2 years ago. 2003, the Middle East, a war orphan. All that information taken together left no question about just what battlefield she'd seen. The Iraq War. She lived through the long night of a war that for the winning side had been a little more than a display of overwhelming resources and overwhelming technology.
安心したよ。
That's a relief.
半人前だが
She's
心
only
構え
half
が
a
あるだ
person.
けだ。
But at least she's ready.
では技術はこれから
Looking
見さ
forward
せ
to
て
seeing
もら
her skills in action.
う。お前が連れて
If
く
you
る以
brought
上
her along
立派
Sam,
には
her
鍛え
training
られ
must
て
be
いるだろうし
sufficient. Now that she'd inferred Cannon's background, the woman's enmity seemed to abate. Their initial reluctance to trust each other had apparently been mutual. Cannon wasn't necessarily happy, but if this was the team Sam wanted, she would accept it. As the woman had observed, Cannon had been trained by Siam after all, and Siam's judgment was absolute. Cannon knew him as her instructor and mentor, the ideal soldier, utterly reliable. She turned her gaze away from the woman and looked out the window. The passing scenery drew over her memories of the life she'd lived over the past few years. A girl who had lost all her relatives to war, the tale of a child who had never held a gun before, becoming a full-fledged soldier at the heels of a veteran mercenary. All of it came hazily drifting back into her mind. All the life I'd had before was taken away by the war. The echoing of gunfire in the distance, the sound of buildings ablaze. I couldn't help but think how much smaller and simpler those sounds were than I'd imagined them to be from stories. No place had seemed safer to me than my house, and was reduced to ruin by a single artillery shell. A few moments after the blast, a group of strange men came barging in. I could hear their heavy footsteps, their hoarse voices muttering, "They're dead, they're dead, we've killed them, we've killed them!" Luckily for me, my father had been thinking quickly and had sent me into the basement. Unluckily, he and my brothers were still in the living room when the blast hit. It wasn't just the furniture that was now gone without a trace. I sat in the basement thinking. From the men's conversation, I realized that they were looking for my father's corpse, my older brother's and my own. I can remember every word those soldiers said. Something had clicked in my mind as I listened. I committed to memory how many men there were, what their voices sounded like, what names they called one another, so that I would never, ever forget. Focused on hearing their every word for the next hour, I felt neither fear nor boredom. I gathered that there was no trace of my father's body, but they had found my older brother's. Satisfied, the soldiers left. All of this happened when I was 12 years old. Trapped under the rubble, it was days before I was rescued. I'd lost my family and any place to belong. The adults who found me realized I'd suffered emotional scarring, but they didn't have the time to bother with that. They're dead, we've killed them, we've killed them. Ah yes, there are too many things one needs to do in life. In my case especially, I expect I'm going to be overworked. It was quite simple, the reason I took up arms. It was not atonement that I sought, but equal compensation for what I'd lost. Unjust usurpers, deeds whose cost was reckoned in blood. I have still not been paid what I am owed. The balance must be settled. I only ask as much as they took from me. That is why I carry on, never resting with the relentless precision of a machine. It is simply a tale of sorrow, giving way to resentment, giving way to cold reason. Was it odd that I never felt malice? Perhaps I could see too clearly. I could see things on a broader scale than others. Could see where the evil was, where the flaws were. Could see it all so clearly that I was dumbstruck into sheer objectivity. The weak or evil, my family, my father, people I should have been proud of, had too many flaws. People of conscience, who esteemed a righteous society, who embraced complicated and contradictory things, who tried to become good sheiks. An Arabic word denoting the leader of a tribe, or a wise man, an honorary term of respect for someone who commands trust. In the modern day, it is often used to refer to scholars, community representatives, and people in high-ranking management positions. Their many failings created enemies, invited war, and brought on their defeat. Violence was a vulgar thing, far beneath the cultured behavior of my father and brother, but it still had the final word over them in the end. We may have yet been cruel to those who would shame us, Yet we had tolerated too many of their foreign invaders. Balance is key. One must clad oneself in complexities, yet be simple at the core. Taking action always requires a first step. If someone takes from you, you take it back. If they kill you, you kill them back. Action and reaction. We should have thought more simply. By perceiving everyone different than ourselves as our enemies, we brought on the war long before it was inevitable. Even if my father and brother had been operating in a vacuum, they probably would have done the same. But every family has so many kin to hold dear, so many others who cloud their perspective. Except for me. Ha! My family and my kin were utterly gone. Apart from the determination I already possessed, I knew I needed to hone myself. My growing skills as a soldier were necessary for me to achieve my goals, and more basically, necessary for me to even survive. My goals. In the beginning, that was all I really thought about. Once I'd been an orphan, I resolved not to rely on anyone. My trauma wouldn't let me trust anyone else. And yet, eventually, I wound up feeling a sense of trust for this man who found me and committed 2 years to training me. It was something I'd never thought I'd feel again. There probably isn't anyone around with the patience to train a complete novice. I wasn't qualified, but I wound up sticking with you. Sam was always more freelancer than soldier. He belonged to a liberation movement, but he made his living taking on jobs as a reliable mercenary. Liberation movement refers here to the Palestinian Liberation Movement, a political movement formed in response to the conflict arising between the newly resettled Jewish people and the pre-existing Arab-Palestinian residents, advocating freedom of the Palestinian people from Israeli rule. There has been a long recurring cycle of terrorism and revolt followed by periods of peace, but to this day the issue remains fundamentally unresolved. I guess his role gave him a whole lot of freedom, because unlike a grunt who simply fired guns, he was allowed to act as sort of an instructor. He had no close ties within his organization, which was convenient for me. I'd taken up arms not because of any ethnic conflict, but for my own personal cause. I'm being compensated for teaching you, but that doesn't make this some kind of formal contractual arrangement. Neither of us should waste the other's time. If I decide you're not suited for what I'm teaching, I'm calling the deal off. Luckily for me, Sam ignored my unique background and upbringing, and simply trained me to be a fighter, growing as an instructor along the way. Good firearms will not limit your abilities. Automatic weapons act as equalizers for soldiers on the battlefield. If both sides have equal technology, then everyone is theoretically capable of the same things as everyone else. Conversely, if you have a gun that isn't up to modern standards, you'll be weeded out first. The first thing you need to learn is the skill to tell whether the weapon in your hands is superior or inferior. Guns are simple, not nearly as complicated as people. You just pull the trigger. My father had handled weapons occasionally, but never showed me how to use one. Political struggle was his preferred form of conflict, and in the end, it was that bias that defeated him. I took up guns to avoid repeating his mistake, but also, the feel of a metal grip in my hands seemed to suit me. At least that was how it always felt to me. Maybe my fondness for weapons was deliberately ingrained into me by Sam's instruction. Don't forget that you're a woman. However superior your skills may be, you cannot change your physique. If you're facing multiple opponents with a pistol, shoot at the nearest target twice. Even if you don't hit, pivot with your knees and fire at the next enemy. Keep them all engaged. Don't let them get close. I mastered the basics that first year. I say this not out of any excess pride or self-confidence, but I was measurably the best of the soldiers other than Siam himself. After that, Siam and I began working jobs together. Siam was against it at first, but I had the ability, and he had at least had the objectivity to acknowledge that fact. He was an exceptional teacher, and I was an even more exceptional student. I was an ideal subordinate, an inhuman combatant willing to use whatever I deemed useful to get an edge. I had countless brushes with death out on the battlefield. The reality of war is that people die regardless of their tech, their experience, their abilities. I ought to have accepted that reality when I lost my family, but it was in the battlefield that made the truth completely clear. The society into which I had been born seeks to assign value, not just in monetary terms, but for individual dignity and even ideologies. But only death is truly impartial. I was able to survive through all of this largely thanks to Siam's aptitude. He wound up protecting me countless times when my inexperience put me in peril. His intervention was not out of any fondness for me, but rather a cool calculation in the interest of completing the mission he knew I could be counted on. Never much to look at, he accrued even more scars in the course of rescuing his risk-prone student. There was also no place that he hadn't been shot, except somehow in the head. Maybe there was a trick to that? I'd wanted to ask him secretly, but there was no allowance for questions while he was my shield. I could only make such small talk once his time as my protector had come to an end. And even then, up until this very moment, there'd never been a good time to ask. I just wound up believing that Siam would never die, that no matter how many times people opened fire on him, he simply wouldn't get hit where it really mattered. That was all probably a delusion on my part, of course, but the fact that he just didn't die. Of course his heart had already died some time before. Bullets couldn't kill someone who was already dead. He deserved my trust. We were of the same breed, he and I. Siam would always have my back, no question.
稀に超人的な兵士が現れる。
Every once in a while, a truly exceptional soldier turns up.
この
Superhuman.
先長く傭兵を
Keep up your
続けてい
mercenary
れば
career long enough,
そういう
you'll run into
旗迷惑な
one
者に
sooner
出
or
会うだろう。
later. My training was complete. I was no longer a student, but a mercenary, and this is what Siam had to tell me? I responded with sarcasm. What was this? Some Hollywood script? Siam never really joked with me before.
いや、
No,
SF では
science
なく
fiction.
現実の
This is
話
as
だ。
real as it gets.
兵士同士の戦
On the
闘
battlefield,
個人
individual
装備の
gear and
性能の
skills can
向
only
上
carry
は
a soldier
頭
so
の
far. Death
戦
comes
場
for
に
us
お
all
いて
equally.
一個の兵士は
My
均
turn
等
could
に
be
死んでいく。
next. After that, it might be
次は
you,
俺の
you
ター
know?
ン。だが中に
But
は
in
そ
the
の
midst of
平
this
等を
sort
覆
of
す
deadly
怪物
equality,
がいる。
there are monsters who can overturn the balance. Sam went on to tell a story of two soldiers, one wielding a revolver and one an automatic handgun. The wildly anachronistic revolver was no match for the automatic. Even disregarding magazine size, a higher rate of fire meant superior firepower, period. A machine pistol capable of firing 3-round bursts would turn the revolver user into Swiss cheese. Machine pistol typically refers to a handgun capable of automatic or semi-automatic fire, though frequently also denotes a weapon between the size of a pistol and a submachine gun. Because of their comparatively limited magazine capacity, such weapons are not, however, capable of the high volume of fire of a full-size machine gun. Famous models include the Beretta M9 3R and the Glock 18. Gun fact. I thought he would have a fact about Swiss cheese. That would have been funny. 3-round burst. Some modern automatic weapons are equipped with a switch that allows the option of firing 3 bullets each time the trigger is pulled, compared to full auto mode, in which the weapon will fire continuously for as long as the trigger is held down. Firing 3-round bursts allows for better conservation of ammunition and control of the weapon.
そう。リボ
It's
ルバ
not
ーと
about
ロ
the
ードが
technical
話にならない。
limitations of the revolver versus the auto.
それが俺たち
It's
の
about
認
our
識であ
awareness of
り、
those limitations,
同時に
and at the same time,
兵
about
士
our
と
own
しての
limits as
限界でもあ
soldiers.
る。
Siam went on, talking about how similar weapons could equalize the abilities of soldiers, and about those who had removed that color from themselves and deviated from the equilibrium. For instance, the unparalleled gunfighter capable of rapid fire, like that seen in a Hollywood Western, a type of character who'd actually existed. Experts who could fan the hammer, unloading 5 shots at a target in the span of a single second. Of course, simple rapid fire alone wasn't worth fearing. It had to be accompanied by the skill to put it on a target. Sam had probably just been trying to offer an explicit example of a time when exceptional human skill could surpass the capabilities of the available hardware. It all seemed too fantastical, but he had been dead serious. Apparently he'd run across such rule breakers in the past.
生まれついての戦争や
Born warmongers,
重機の
patron
申し子
saints of small
強運の
arms,
塊
lucky souls,
我
people
々
with
とは
different
違う
physical
身体の機
capabilities
能
than you or I.
そういう身体機能に
Natural
天性
differences
の
in
差があるのは
physical
今でもある
prowess, sure,
その才
but
能
also
がぴった
talents
りと
perfectly
戦
suited
争
for
に符
war,
合する
maestros of the battlefield,
戦場でのみ
soldiers
人
far
間の規格
outside
か
the
ら逸
norm,
脱し
who can accomplish
一
things
個
no
の兵士
single
では起
soldier
こし得
should
ない
be
戦
able
果
to.
を上げるも
When you meet an enemy like that, it's like
出会
staring
って
down
し
a
まった
storm.
兵士にとっては嵐
Still, even according to Siam, such supermen could only deal with 3 or 4 opponents within any given moment. So assuming you had 5 or more to attack them in that moment, there'd be no problem taking them down. I was relieved. He wasn't talking mere fiction, but he also just wasn't telling some joke. So then, what was his story all about?
お前は超人ではないが
You're not a super
極
person,
限ではあ
but
る
you are superb.
それを自ら
And
承知して
moreover,
いるのも
you
知って
know
いる
yourself.
だからこそ気
Still,
をつけろ
that's all the more reason to be on your guard.
五体の境界
Don't
を
misjudge your
誤ら
body's limitations.
ず己の才能
Don't
に
depend
頼
too
む
much on your own skill.
お前は完成されてい
You
る
are complete, so long as you have a proper grasp of your own capabilities. You won't
決し
be
て破れ
defeated.
ることはない
Thus did Siam acknowledge my ascendance to the status of a warrior. It was an achievement to be proud of, to be seen as his sole peer as a combatant, perhaps even his better. More than anything, the esteem I held for Siam was a reflection of the esteem he showed me. We were the same. That's why, when the time came, I had scarred my left arm. I wanted a physical symbol of our connection. Ah, okay. Introductions were a simple affair. Siam had no need to give his name. Cannon had no interest in the woman's. And the woman seemed satisfied with what she knew of the other two.
呼び方はシャムとお嬢さん
Shall I just call you Siam and young lady then? The newcomer asked.
問題がないのは
Siam shrugged.
そち
If
ら
you're
の
okay
もの
with
だ
that, what name are you going by now?
あ
Yes,
連携は必要
I
だ
suppose we'll need
カナンという
to
のは
that to coordinate. How does Cannon work? Cannon couldn't suppress a sound of irritation. She tugged wordlessly on Siam's coat, like a pouting cat, staking a claim to what it wanted for its own.
つまりそれは問題ない
Sorry, but that might pose a problem, Siam
冗
replied.
談だ
I'm joking, the
今は
woman
サダ
said.
と通している
I'm actually going by Sadak these days. In Islam, this refers to the act of giving spontaneous voluntary charity to the needy. It is distinct from zakat, a form of obligatory almsgiving. Alright.
それじゃ
Now then, shall we get down to the matter at hand? Sedeka explained how the job would unfold. They'd wait until the train had traveled for an hour beyond the border before moving against their objective. Hopefully, they could finish the mission an hour before their arrival in Amman. Ken peered at Siam's face, and Sadek spoke. His color was, as always, blue. That shift earlier to an unluckier color, the cloudy whiteness of an unfamiliar stranger, had lasted only for a moment.
目的となる貨物車両
Our objective is the freight car, number 3, Sadek Sadaka explained. 7 guards apiece are stationed in cars 2 and 4 to either side. It looks like 2 of the guards from car 4 leave to patrol the back end of the train at set intervals. And speak of the devil. Without even shifting her gaze, Cannon could confirm the presence of 2 soldiers moving through the car in which she sat. 2 blue blotches passing by, the color of alert escorts, a rending inorganic blue, the color of fighters skilled in the use of guns they carried. People who were this color usually rubbed Cannon the wrong way. Just being near them made her uncomfortable. Sam was a contradictory counterexample. Despite his dangerous hue, he eased her nerves. But whether the colors expressed themselves as painful or gentle didn't mean anything. The colors were merely colors. Whether warm or cold, everything was done neatly in simple colors, as if painted with run-of-the-mill materials.
列車の最後尾は同じく貨物
The
列
last
車
car
だ
in
が
the train is also a freight car, but everything in there is ordinary goods. If worse comes to worse, we could conceivably hole ourselves up in there, Sadaka said. Of course, if someone were to toss in a tear gas grenade or something, we'd be done for.
いや
Let's try to stay away from any direct conflict, Siam said.
目撃者も
The
犠牲
orders
者
were
も
to
出す
avoid
なと
both
いうのは
casualties
どうだ
and eyewitnesses.
ことは秘密だ
Agreed. We infiltrate the freight
連中が
car.
私たちに気づ
The
く
enemy
のは
won't even
列
know
車
we're
が
there
アームに到着し
until the train
何も
arrives in
かも
Amman.
立ち去った
We're already long gone.
いいね
Over and
それは
done?
私の注文
Perfect.
通りだ
では確認する
Let me just confirm then, Siam
輸
replied.
送の真偽が明ら
We've
かになる
established that they're transporting
我
a
々の
weapon.
目的は
Now our objective is to recover it and get out. Any changes to that?
ない
None.
スポン
You
サ
do
ー
your
として
part,
同志の
and I'll
行動
do
に期
mine.
待しまた
been just over 5 hours since they boarded the train. Ken felt a sense of relief that at long last the action she'd been anticipating would finally commence. Their objective was to recover the parcel in the freight car toward the front section of the train. They would infiltrate the car without alerting the guards, acquire the payload, and then disembark from the train as if they were just normal passengers. Top priority was acquiring the item. Secrecy was second. If it turned out that they needed to take the payload by force, they'd been given permission to initiate combat. Violence was definitely on the table. If it came to that. If they were detected, they'd wind up in a 3-on-14 shootout aboard a train.
OK 私とシャムの役割は
Okay,
分かる
Cannon said. I know what you and I are doing,
この女は
Sam.
何をするんだ
What's her job, though?
そもそも
Why is
ど
our
うして
sponsor even
スポンサー
here in the
が出るんだ
first place?
彼女の専門は
She's a
暗号
code
を破
breaking
る
specialist.
本来なら別の人間を
Ordinarily,
手配する
they wouldn't have sent the sponsor
急な話
personally.
だったからな
But time was of the
昨日
essence.
の時点で合流できる
When the
専
plan
門
fell 彼
家
into place
女しか
yesterday,
いなかった
she was the only operative available to make the rendezvous.
暗号破りって
And so they sent a code breaker?
そうすねるな
Don't be like that.
この
She's
道
an
では
expert at
こ
what
いつ
she
は一流
does.
だ
This will be good
お前も
experience
い
for
い
you.
経験になるさ
随分とらしくないな
How
シャ
not
ム
like you, Sam, Sadaka
カ
said.
ナンという子供
I
に
guess
壊
the
され
rumors
たと
about
い
you
うのは
going
本
soft
当だ
over
った
some
か
kid were true.
人一倍点がかかってい
She's
る
just
だけ
causing
だ
me an epic amount of trouble.
そんな話が増
Why
え
is
回ってい
this
る
some sort of story that's been going around?
いいや
No.
我々がカ
We
ナン
just
と
heard that
いう
you'd
優
picked
秀
up
な
some
人材を
extremely
手に入
capable
れた
individual named
という
Cannon.
話ぐらいさ私もまさ
I
か
didn't
こ
expect
んな
she'd
お
be
嬢
like
さん
this
とは
young
思って
lady
い
here,
なか
though.
ったが
Well,
私も
I didn't know
お
someone
前み
like
たいな
you
女の
was our
スポンサー
sponsor,
とは知らなか
Cannon
った
replied.
知ってた
Not that
も
we've
の
seen
もな
much
かっ
of you over the past 2 years.
それは違うな
You've got the wrong
私は
idea.
多くの支援者のう
I'm
ちの
only
一
one
人
of many of your
指導者
supporters.
じゃない
I'm not a mentor.
大体
I don't have the
一
time to
戦
play
の
an
本腰
individual
を入れる
part
ほ
in
ど
every
暇
little
じゃない
scuffle.
そのくせ
But
こ
you've
んな
got
仕
time
事
to
に
show
顔
up
を
in
出して
person
る
for a job like this?
別件で近くに
As
来
it
ていて
happens, I
ね
do,
そのついで
Sadaka
だよ
replied. I was already nearby, dealing with another matter.
今回はネタがネタだし
Given the details
無視
of this
するわけに
mission,
もいかんだろ
couldn't simply ignore it.
すればよかったの
I wish you had.
こんな
Sam
の
and I
私
can
とシャ
handle
ム
this
だ
on
け
our
で十
own.
分だ
The enmity between the two had become like a steady rhythm, driving along their conversation. It did make them interesting to listen to, for better or for worse.
定か
What do you mean
そ
by
の
another
別件とは
matter, Sadaka? Sam
何か
asked.
問題でも
Were you here because there was some problem?
ほう
Oh. Cannon was intrigued. Sam wasn't the kind of person to ask irrelevant questions. Had he twigged something that might affect the mission? Whatever the case, Sadaka smiled pleasantly.
プロジェクトの一つに
An
問題が出
issue
て
cropped
きた
up in one of our projects.
人材の調査
I've been looking into the personnel involved, along with a flaw in a weapon.
そうだな
Here's an example. How would you feel if you were dealing with a gun that you expected to be quite lethal, but which an observer claimed had no
当たった
effect
のに効果が
whatsoever?
ないとクレームがあったとしたらどうだ
何それ
What's that supposed to
そんな
mean?
の不具合
You're
どころ
not
の
talking
話
about
じ
a
ゃない
flaw there, Cannon said.
れっきとした欠陥
That
商
would
品
just
じ
be
ゃ
a
ない
completely defective piece of hardware.
あ
Yes, young
あ
lady,
その通りだお
exactly.
嬢さん
When there's a defect
今
in
まで
something
信頼
you've
してい
always
たものに
trusted,
欠陥があ
it
った
affects
では
that trust.
我々の信頼に関わる無視してもい
You
い
could
不安要
ignore
素
it
なん
and
だが
hope it won't cause
取
you
り除
trouble.
けるなら取り除
But
い
you're
た
better
方が
off
商
ridding
品に
yourself
な
of
る
something that isn't up to snuff.
現地に行って問題
When
点
such a situation arises, I head on site, assess whatever problems there are, and recommend appropriate courses of action. It's a boring job.
近頃はこんな細
These
かい
days I'm
ばかり
basically a
だ
maid, less a code breaker and more a risk breaker, you could
リス
say.
クブレーカーというところか
そう
I see.
偉
So
そうに
you
し
act
てる
all
けど
important,
誰
but
か
that
の
doesn't
小
change the
遣い
fact
に
that you're just
頼り
running
ない
errands.
まったくだ
Through a battlefield,
まる
yes.
で戦争の使いだ
Sadaka brushed aside Cannon's insult with an air of confidence. Cannon scowled. The woman was so sure of herself. She turned away and gazed at the scenery outside, and then she realized the snack she'd been gnawing on was gone.
シャム
Sam, Cannon hissed.
今日は多いな
Take it easy, Cannon, Sam
そ
said.
んなに不
I
満
know you're under a lot of stress. Sam,
話の途中だ
Sadaka
な
interjected.
少し
Do you mind if I interrupt real quick?
簡潔に済む
So
のは
long as you keep it quick.
あ
Sure.
あさっき
So I
から
noticed that your
気になって
partner has been nibbling on something.
お前の
What is
相棒は
that?
何を食べてる
Some kind of new snack?
そんなもの
That's right. Want to try some? Okay. Without saying anything, Sadaka took one of the offered treats. She tore open the paper wrapper on one end, then stuck the contents between her teeth like a cigarette, just as Cannon had. Cannon watched her resentfully, knowing what she was tasting. A simple, unpretentious sweetness. The purity of concentrated sugar.
ではなく
Sugar?
そのものだ
Sadaka
た
said.
だの砂糖じゃないかこれ
Is that really all this is?
あ
Yes, hardened sticks of sugar. They're dried and formed into
乾燥
shapes.
して固形化したものを見
We've
つけて
become
以
big
来
fans ever since we found them at a market nowadays.
今じゃ注
They
射器を
use
使って固形化
injectors
し
to
て
shape them. The best
品
ones
質
come
と
from
いう
Japan,
なら
I
日本製
hear.
のものがいいそう
Cannon focused on gnawing her own stick, not really listening to Siam's explanation. There was a brief silence. Sadaka let out a sullen sniff.
変わった思考だ
You
ね
have strange tastes.
う
You
まいの
really like these things?
うん
Yeah,
無駄が
I
ない
like
の
that there's nothing to get in the way of the flavor. Sadaka raised an eyebrow dubiously. I mean, sugar's pretty sweet. The time had come. They got up their seats without a sound. Draped in their hoods, Cannon and Sadaka made their way through the train, doing their best to draw no attention. Siam had put together a timeline. They should spend no more than 30 minutes at most on their infiltration. In addition to the soldiers stationed in the passenger cars, it was possible that the enemy also had lookouts disguised as normal passengers. A seat left open for too long might arouse unwanted suspicion. The team needed to sneak into the freight car, obtain the payload, and return to their seats without a single minute wasted. Siam was too tall and muscular to be well suited for infiltration. He would hang back and act as the girl's rear guard, and if the operation was discovered, his task would be to secure an escape route for them.
最後尾に着いた
We're in
時計を合わ
position.
せよ
Sadaka called in on one of the tiny voice-activated radios that the three carried. Synchronize watches! She and Cannon prepared to make their way to their final objective in the freight car up ahead. Despite their clashing personalities, they moved almost like twins as they went about their work. It was evidence that their training had instilled them with similar priorities.
確認する
Just so I'm clear
わ
on
携帯
this,
しているのはベレッタ
Sadaka
と
said,
断層だけか
all you're bringing is that Beretta and one spare magazine?
お前こそ
Yeah,
銃はそれ
hope
だ
you're
けでいい
okay with that.
ああ
Yes.
戦闘になっ
If
た
it
場合
comes to a
迎撃
firefight,
はお前に
I'll
任
let you
せる
handle shooting back.
今
My
回の
job here is
私の仕
code
事
breaking.
は暗号破りだ
As long as I have my
接
PC
続用
and
の
someone to
PC と
cover me,
護
I'm
身
good.
用に一丁あればいい
Both of them were going in with minimal loadout. As a covert agent in enemy territory, that made Cannon uneasy. But then, if a fight did break out here, the mission was already a partial failure. The organization couldn't spare equipment for a team that only needed it if they fouled things up.
お嬢さん
Have you
ルー
checked
ト
the
の
route?
確認は
ルートそのも
The
のは
route's
問題ない
fine, so long as you're
いい
fine.
の
This isn't going to be
これ
desk
日頃
work.
専門外だろ
Not my
その
specialty,
程度のリス
but
ク
an
は
acceptable level of risk.
それなりに
This isn't my first rodeo. It's probably not how I phrased that.
お前は
What about
乗
you?
り物酔いはす
You
る
ready for this?
暴れ馬には
I've
なる
ridden my share of wild horses. Once I get on, I don't fall
あんま
off.
りね
上等
Quite the swashbuckling little heroine, aren't you?
では
Let's get this circus
サ
started.
ーカスの始まりだ
Oh, she definitely said circus. Yep. The garb that the two girls wore under their cloaks was quite different from the norm for Middle Eastern women. Yes, agreed. Aside from the fact that one wore red and the other wore black, their outfits were rather similar. What, in the fact that they wore pants and tops? How is this similar outfit? I disagree with this text. Both of them had dressed for maximum freedom of movement. Code for less clothes.
潜入経路に問題はない
No problems with the infiltration route, Sadaka reported. We're on the move. With all the casual air of a traveler going for a stroll, and without any hesitation whatsoever, she headed for the outside of the train. No problems with the infiltration route. We're on the move. The call cut out. From here on, the team would retain radio silence, except in cases of emergency. As the girls' backup, Siam had to decide on a course of action. He could try making his way through the inside of the train, heading straight toward the sequestered freight car. It It would make him obvious, but that would at least draw the guards' attention onto him for a time. He had no intention of trying to get into the freight car itself, of course. His goal would be simply to draw the guards' eyes. He could claim to be on his way to meet a friend. The guards would be sure to intercept him and try to usher him away from the freight car. While that was going on, Cannon and Sadaka could hopefully be able to sneak inside. But it seemed that wasn't going to be an option. There were no ordinary passengers in the cars where the guards were posted. If the thing they were protecting was what Siam thought it was, these guards would be good. Any unusual action he took would provoke them, and only heighten their alertness. He didn't want to do anything to complicate things for the girls. He decided that his best course of action was just to stay ready in case things went bottoms up. He checked the gun he'd hidden at his feet. Then he pictured in his mind the guards in the nearest compartment, their builds, their gear, their positions. Veteran fighter though he was, he could think of no good way to make up for the sheer difference in numbers. If a fight did break out, it would still be 1 against 7. To break through an enemy position held by soldiers who knew what they were doing, he'd have to completely abandon his own better judgment. Those who are willing to rise above themselves can overcome any stroke of luck. He was reminded of a story he'd been told as a student, a fable involving a board game. Life was represented by the board. There was a clear, defined endpoint. One proceeded toward that end, but dire pitfalls had been set up on the way to the goal. It was a valuable lesson. One shouldn't have a goal in life, or rather, one shouldn't think of the end as the goal. The proper way to live one's life was to realize it was already over. One must focus on the moment. This game of striving for the goal, for the end, that was just a way of rushing headlong towards one's death. The priorities were backwards. One shouldn't have a goal in life. One shouldn't seek meaning in oneself. To seek reward, to seek proof that you've lived by achieving some hypothetical endpoint, that was a fool's game. Sam's ability to live without hunting for such proofs was one of the very few things on which he prided himself as a mercenary. Slipping his gun out of its hiding place, Sam narrowed his eyes slightly. Until now, he had been a lone soldier, put to use however his employers deemed necessary. He held no tenets, no opinions. He acknowledged that he was an instrument of war. He acknowledged that he was an age where such instruments were necessary. How many battlefields had he passed through? He could see no value in trying to sum up such experience with some complex, ever-shifting philosophy. There were those who would wage war, and those who would try to end it, and tools were necessary for both of those ends. That was all the justification a soldier required. Warriors fought, and then they died. There was no room for anything resembling a normal life. That's who they were, demons, not men. To Siam, to this mercenary, this was a simple fact. His watch showed that 6 minutes had passed, 24 minutes to go. By then, they would all know if they had failed or succeeded. It was too long and yet too short, a gulf of time for him to fill with his own rusting memories. He had been born into an age of enduring conflict. Wait, we're giving another flashback? 1948, the First Arab-Israel War, which started with the declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel. Oh, I don't know how much longer this is. In response to Israel's Declaration of Independence of 1948, the 5 nations of Lebanon, Syria, Transjordan, Iraq, and Egypt, later joined by Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Morocco, declared war and marched on Palestine. Armistice agreements were signed in 1949, with the ultimately triumph Israel taking control of most of Palestine. Honestly, I think I have to stop here. As it's 10 after 9, and my throat is not going to maintain for much more of this, and I don't want... It feels like we're about to head into another flashback for him. They still have to do whatever they're doing, and then I guess we're coming back to the airplane. Like, this seems super long. So I'm actually going to cut the stream here. We'll come back to this next week and finish it off. I'm assuming if I just go back to the title screen, it'll save. There's a save thing in the thing. Just want to double check this. If I go back in here, it'll be fine, right? Or does it make me start over? Yeah, okay, cool. Good. Alright, we'll come back to this game next week. I thought we'd actually finish it today for sure, but that's fine. I'll come back to this next week. And I still don't know if I'm still gonna play the same game on Sunday or not. I'll have to see. But that's gonna be it for tonight for sure. And I guess we'll resume this next week on, what's my stream schedule again? Thursday? Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Hopefully we can finish, we should be able to finish this part then, and the maybe some of the other stuff, maybe within the 3 things. I'm trying to, okay, they are on a break over at Loading Ready Run. Cool. We're gonna go raid them even though they're on commercial, because they're the only other people I can see online right now. And why not? They're playing Magic. If you're not into that, that's cool. I'm not either. I'm not gonna be sticking around for that. But I do like to raid people afterwards if I can. I'm gonna go make some more tea or something. Y'all take care. I guess I should at least put the Discord and YouTube's and the links in the chat here. You can join those if you want. Set up this raid. Alright, I'm gonna go. You all take care and do something nice for yourselves or each other, or I don't know. I'll see you later. Bye.